I'm Nathan Simmons, and if I had a nickel for every podcast we've recorded, I'd be dead.
Do you know who I am? I am Dustin Goes to Hollywood.
Knew it.
And I sound like this.
That's amazing. I love it.
I hope people that are just listening can actually understand what any of that was.
Let's rock.
I had to put subtitles burned onto that just so you guys can understand.
No, the audience knows what's happening here.
Okay.
We, the advice that I would give to them is, you gotta stick with Dustin. He's got his own MO, modus operandi.
That was my alternate intro, just so you know. But this is the Silver Linings Playlist, a podcast that tries to find the silver lining in finding out your dad is possessed by the root of all evil. Is that fair to say?
Possibly,
Yeah.
because I would say this movie makes the answer, what little answers we got in the show, even muddier in some ways.
Yeah. Oh, boy. Okay. So right off the bat, what I want to say is if you were tuning in to this episode and you are not familiar with Twin Peaks at all, you didn't watch the show or anything like that,
Yeah.
I will go ahead and tell you, I don't think you can just watch this movie and fully enjoy the conversation we're about to have because this is not what I would call a typical movie.
No, it's not.
By any means.
You know what? I think the best way to get to the root of that question is to ask our wonderful comptroller, JT Kelly, who went into this movie blind.
Yeah.
JT, did you have any idea?
Any questions?
at any point what was happening in this film?
This podcast episode would be 4 hours long.
If you just gave us your questions.
It's probably going to be.
There's not a single scene, guys, that I knew what the fuck was happening.
That's okay.
Ashley was really excited to hear what you came away with.
I text Dustin and I was like, the only thing that makes sense is that I was definitely supposed to watch the show.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And then Dustin said, okay, I'm going to go ahead and say something. Answer one of these questions. You were 100% supposed to watch the show.
Yeah.
And I've never hit Dustin. Okay. Never. But the fact that you set me up for the most confusing 2.5 hours. Oh my gosh.
Can I defend myself? Can I defend myself?
No, you can't.
In all fairness, this movie was also released as a standalone feature.
Yeah.
Like there are people who have experienced what you experienced. And, it makes a lot of sense. Look, I love this movie, but it makes a lot of sense that it was literally booed at Cannes.
Yeah. People were mad at this movie. So let me break it down in just ways that maybe everyone will understand. So first of all, JT, would it surprise you if I said that for those of us who have watched all the Twin Peaks, including The Return, which comes after this movie, that this film simultaneously makes a lot of sense and somewhat doesn't make any sense at all? Would that surprise you?
No, that's absolutely wrong because it just doesn't make sense. And so I was want to ask you guys, like, I know it's hard to like imagine not watching the show or like not having the context and trying to watch it in a vacuum.
Sure.
Would any of that make sense to y'all?
So that's what I was going to say next is, so we're coming at this from 3 different angles because Nathan, you're more familiar with Twin Peaks than I am because you've seen it probably more often than I have. I've only gone through the entire thing once. The TV show, the movie, missing pieces, all that once.
And you mainlined that shit like it was heroin. You watched the pilot, and by the next Tuesday, you were done with the franchise.
Yes.
Well, so even Christy watched it with me, and she's seen Twin Peaks.
Yeah.
And I was like, "Do you know anything that's happening?" She's like, "Absolutely not."
So that's, I think, intended. I think that's the right response because this was planned to be part of 3 different movies.
Yeah.
And because this one was so financially just, it bombed so fucking hard and critically bombed so hard that they abandoned that. And then Twin Peaks wouldn't come back until 2017, like almost 20 years later with The Return.
Imagine, if you will, this was I'm going to throw out, I'm serious about this. This is not a bit. This was the last Jedi of its era.
Yeah.
Where this movie did not deliver what anybody wanted, including like hardcore fans of the show. So JT, David Lynch and Mark Frost create Twin Peaks. It has a incredibly successful first season run.
Mm-hmm.
And midway through season 2, David Lynch departs to work on other projects. And the show is basically being made up as it goes along.
Yeah.
And not in the way that Lynch typically does that, where he allows the story to kind of dictate itself and goes into this sort of transcendental meditation form of filmmaking that's lots of vibes and lots of questions.
Mm-hmm.
So season 2 is seen as a huge disappointment, and it ends on a massive cliffhanger.
Huge cliffhanger.
This movie comes out 1 year later. The massive cliffhanger is, imagine if Lost ended with Matthew Fox possessed by the smoke monster. And that's basically like how the show ends.
Yeah.
So the movie comes out a year later and doggedly avoids answering any of those questions.
Yeah.
There are scenes, because time works weird in Twin Peaks. There are scenes in this movie that take place after the events of the TV show that are interspersed with the main thrust of the film, which takes place 7 days before the beginning of Twin Peaks, and at some points a year before the beginning of Twin Peaks.
Yep.
So even folks who loved the show and were, having Twin Peaks watch parties and creating their own cork boards of theories and speculation left this movie saying, well, shit, I knew a lot of that stuff, and then the other stuff, I don't know what it was meant to tell me, but it didn't answer any of my questions.
Yeah.
Well, see, that's the thing. So when I was watching, I was like, all right, so I know nothing about Twin Peaks. I know nothing. So I'm going to try to, take notes or questions more than I usually would.
Yeah.
And it was 15 minutes in when it was like, I can't take notes. Do I have questions? Yes, I already have too many, and it's 15 minutes in.
When Lil walks in,
and I'm just like, I'm just gonna stop
and let it wash over you.
And I can't, because every 5 minutes was something off the wall, absurd, and just what the fuck is? Why are they acting weird? What's going on? Like everything. And
I have to say, as someone who, I think this was the 4th time I've watched this movie, when it started, I turned to my wife and said, really, thank you. I wish, is that what I've been doing to people?
It sure is.
I turned to my wife and I said, I wish I could just watch this. Like, I hate that I have to take notes during this watch, because it is a movie that just begs to be seen and like washed over you. I will push back a little bit and say that I think like the main aspect of the film, that being a girl who is disintegrating and dealing with really heavy revelations in her home life, who is basically abandoned and on this downward spiral, I think that stuff comes through without watching the show. It's just, the little man and the ring and the possession of it all, that
the
really,
waiting room and
all of that stuff, it clouds it up, all the David Bowie of it all.
But we'll talk about it. So JT, I want to tell you that I didn't put you on this path just to fuck with you, because I spoke to Nathan about this off mic, and I was like, hey, listen, I want to do Fire Walk with Me, because I just seen it for the first time, and this will be my excuse to just talk about Twin Peaks in general on like a platform.
Sure.
And so I was like, do you think we could have JT watch it?
Something white guys have never done on a podcast before.
We're breaking new ground here.
I was like, do you think I could have JT watch it? And I know he won't understand the plot, but do you think it is visceral enough that he would have an emotional reaction to it? And we kind of came to the consensus of like, even if we know what is happening in the movie, as people that have watched the show and are rewatching the movie, there are moments where like, I don't need to understand this. I just know that David Lynch is trying to evoke a certain emotion and it's working. And I was like, does that work for the entire movie for someone who doesn't have context?
That's true. Like, I did not want this to be what a fun prank on JT.
Yeah,
it is.
yeah.
I truly did want to know how this works.
Well, it doesn't.
It doesn't.
Well, that's my question. I'm like, I know, I understand you're confused and you're agitated by that, but was there parts where you were like, I I've accepted that I don't understand this. I'm just going to take it at face value.
Oh, yeah. So what kept me watching,
Uh-huh.
like what made me not just turn this shit off was I was so like taken back by what I was seeing on screen.
Right.
Like this is a review that I saw, but it kind of sums it up.
Mhm.
It's like you're viewing someone else's nightmare.
That's good. Yeah.
It's not a fever dream. It's not, which you can say it's a fever dream, but it's someone else's.
Yeah.
Yes.
So just watching these series of weird ass events happening like that doesn't make sense to us. I just wanted to see what happens.
I would say that is intentional. In fact, so much
That's
so
why
that
Mulholland Drive is a masterpiece as well.
That too.
And
I was going to say, David Bowie literally comes out and says it. We live inside a dream.
Yeah.
I don't think that is a line of dialogue that is just supposed to, just exemplify how crazy
weird
that
he is.
character it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that is telling you straight up because
go ahead.
Go ahead, Nathan. Go.
Oh.
No, I'm already like running a mile a minute.
Well, because I don't want it to get too far in the rear view. Piggybacking off something that you said a minute ago, Dustin,
Mhm.
there's something about the way. So not all of David Lynch's work works for me.
Yeah.
Sometimes I do find that he found more value in ambiguity and psychedelia than I typically do. Like I have a certain threshold with surrealism before I'm like, but okay, what do you want me to feel? What do you want, and I know that that's the antithesis of the work is when I ask, what do you want me to feel?
Yeah.
But the Lynch has a gift for imbuing, or had rather a gift for imbuing simple imagery with so much emotion and these sort of primal fears I'm intimidated to talk about this movie because it's so hard for me to articulate the way his films make me feel.
Yeah.
But there's something about how Lynch can shoot a lonely stoplight at night, or an empty chair in a school.
A ceiling fan.
A ceiling fan that makes me want to vomit, that makes me want to cry, that makes me recoil in terror. I mean, the scariest the scariest moment in this one of the scariest moments in this movie is just seeing Leland Palmer step out of his front door and adjust his tie while smiling.
Yeah.
Just that simple evil. And JT, one of the things that really strikes me about this movie, and not to jump too far ahead, but the show Twin Peaks is about a town reeling from the murder of Laura Palmer.
Yeah.
And Laura Palmer throughout the series is sort of seen as this idealized version of the American teenager.
Yeah, she's the homecoming queen. She's,
Yeah.
like the perfect idyllic girl.
She was helping with Meals on Wheels.
Yeah.
She was an after-school tutor. And the whole time you're thinking, wow, how did she manage to do all of this? She barely could.
How is she roped up in all of this shit? Like, she was a prostitute. She was a drug addict. She was cheating on her boyfriend, we'll put in quotes. You know, like, how does a person get like that and then still have this reputation? And I think the TV show more so answers it than this movie does, but the movie has it as well, is the whole movie, to me, JT, especially when you reach that 30-minute mark and you get to actual Twin Peaks,
right,
is let's see how this girl spiraled and no one cared. No one could see the obvious writing on the walls that this girl was going down a path that was leading to only one conclusion. And of course, there is the supernatural and like, extraterrestrial elements of like Bob and things that we'll get into. But it mostly comes down to, even in these tight-knit communities, because that's what the show is about, right? It's an ensemble cast. It's basically a soap opera.
Yeah.
That's just like incredibly melodramatic.
A town of 5,000 people.
Exactly. Like everybody knows everybody, and yet everybody knows nobody. Nobody understands what anyone is going through. Even in these like heightened situations, like it's not exactly this, but like, in soap operas where there's like character that's like, I have amnesia, and suddenly it's revealed that I'm your brother or whatever, like I thought you were dead. Turns out I'm not. That happens all the time and throughout the show.
Yeah.
But the point, I think the reason people were so against this movie that were fans of the show is because this movie has an entirely different tone and vibe to it than the TV show does. The
show is fun and quirky and kind of cozy.
It's light and bubbly. Yeah.
While still dealing with these dark elements. And then the movie
it has fleeting moments of the Red Room and stuff like that. Like those really creepy, unnerving moments. But this movie is all that.
And then the movie is, I want you to reckon with the pain that this actually was. And that's the reason that I think David Lynch, for all of his cryptic detachment and aloofness, was one of our most humanistic directors that ever lived, because there's so many shows that are a quote unquote dead girl show, right? Like there is a murder at the beginning and the whole show is about figuring out who committed this murder.
True Detective starts that way.
Right. And to David Lynch, Laura Palmer couldn't just be a dead girl.
Yeah.
Like she had to show that she was a human being who suffered.
Well, let's actually thank God for that, because Jesus Christ, she can act.
Thank
Cheryl
you.
Lee.
Oh my God.
She is incredible.
If there's one note I have on this, it's that.
Yeah.
And I was like, man, she looks familiar. Where have I seen her from? And I looked her up, and the James Woods Vampires movie.
Yeah.
I remember watching that as a kid.
Both her and Moira Kelly were also on One Tree Hill. So Ashley was like flipping out over that. And then, and I've seen people talk about this performance as being big, and it is in a lot of ways, but I do think it's also fearless. And there's, again, talking about those primal reactions, those visceral reactions that we get from David Lynch's films. There's something that's so much about the performance and yet feels perfectly calibrated to this picture and to the kind of cosmic scale of evil that we're dealing with.
Yeah.
And again, not a bit. I would compare it to some of Nicolas Cage's better performances.
Yep.
Because this is an utterly fearless, fully in the body, in the brain performance.
So I think Grace Zabriskie, who plays Sarah Palmer, her mother.
Yeah.
I think she said it best, because she was quoted as saying, Cheryl Lee gave everything she had. She gave more than she could afford to give, and she spent years coming back.
Yeah.
And I think it's a shame that this movie was not appreciated in its time, because there's so many huge directors and critics that just shit all over this thing.
Yeah.
And one reason I wanted to talk about this movie in this episode is, number one, we haven't done a David Lynch movie yet.
Mm-hmm.
Number two, this was really my first entry point into David Lynch, and I'm excited to now branch off into, I really want to see Blue Velvet. I really want to go back. I've seen Mulholland Drive when I was 16, but I don't even count that anymore because I don't remember it.
Sure.
But I think what David Lynch is so good at is filming the unexplainable in a way that is malleable to whoever it is that's experiencing it. So one of the things, we were talking about this off mic, Nathan, but Cheryl Lee in particular, since we're talking about her, and we'll get to the info dump and all that stuff in just a minute. But I want to give spoiler free kind of thoughts on this thing. So in case anybody who hasn't seen the movie can still enjoy this episode if they choose to.
For sure.
That moment when Cheryl Lee says goodbye to James on the dark road in the bag, and she's in his ear screaming, "I love you, James." Yeah. Right after she just said the most cutting thing to him, which is he says, "You always hurt the ones you love," and she says, "Or you just pity them." Right. I think
she is taken to cruelty as a way to protect herself.
She does the same thing with Donna.
Yeah, absolutely.
But what I'm getting at is I think she is experiencing an emotion in that moment that not many people can say earnestly that they've felt before in their lives. Even if you think you've hit rock bottom, I don't think you've hit it to the point that Laura Palmer feels in this movie. And I love that David Lynch is I'm going to make an entire movie about the 7 days before Laura Palmer died. Because JT, I don't know if you know this, but in the TV show, the pilot starts with finding her body washed up on the shore wrapped in plastic. Right. And David Lynch has said, and Mark Frost has said, we never intended to answer who killed Laura Palmer.
Yeah, they were forced to by the executives.
Yeah, Bob Iger specifically was told, you have to answer this question.
Yeah.
But the reason they didn't want to is because the whole show is about how do people react to that. And then when you realize that that's all people cared about, he's like, okay, well then I'm not just going to make Laura Palmer just some dead girl that you find washed up on shore. I'm going to give her life. I'm going to show her as a person and show how they get to this point. And not only that, I'm going to show you how an entire town can watch that happen to somebody and then just turn a blind eye to it. It's truly, and the fact that this aired on ABC, the TV show is ABC in the 90s. This was revolution. They had 30 million people watching an episode. Yeah. Now you could The Last of Us gets 600,000. It's crazy how many people watch this thing.
Supposedly, according to Michael Ontkean, who plays the sheriff in the TV series, he said he was friends with Paul Newman, and Paul Newman saw the pilot and called him and said, "You just starred in the best movie I've ever seen."
Yeah, that pilot is incredible. But what I will say, too, before we get to the info dump is I decided to go into this thing because I was listening to every episode of Blank Check the Podcast, which has come up a lot on this show.
Sure.
And I finally got to David Lynch. They started talking about Twin Peaks,
and you were dreading that miniseries because you don't have a connection to Lynch.
I did not have a connection to Lynch, and everything I'd seen from Twin Peaks, like the little out of context snippets, I was like, well, this just seems not my speed at all. And
sure.
As I heard Griffin and David talking about it, I was like, this doesn't sound like what I imagined Twin Peaks would be.
Yeah.
And so I watched the first 2 seasons in like a week, and I was like, okay, that was fun. It's not what I expected.
Yeah.
But I really liked it. And then when I watched the movie, I'm like, this is what I thought the show was going to be like. I thought the show was going to be this, like unnerving,
harrowing drama.
Exactly. And not like this goofy, quirky, melodramatic soap opera, which I still liked. I like all of it.
Yeah.
And then The Return was like, to me, the ultimate form of both of those things combined.
Mm-hmm.
The Return is, I think it was Vulture who said it's the best movie of the 2010s.
Yeah.
And it's an 18 episode miniseries.
18-hour odyssey.
Yeah.
I have not revisited The Return since it aired. My plan is once we wrap this episode, I'm going to dive back in.
Oh, but I'm excited for you.
But it is grown in it's one of those things that is like percolated, much like a fish in my brain for years.
In the coffee pot. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm really excited because I feel like my memory of it has grown in appreciation more than I liked it at the time. So I'm very excited to revisit it. This is I feel like I'm going to ramble a lot in this episode because when I talk about Lynch, it's very difficult for me to be concise in my thoughts because it's a lot of feelings just tumbling out. So JT, ahead of time, I greatly appreciate your patience.
Me too.
I appreciate you being a guinea pig. And I do hope that this doesn't put you off watching at least the first season of Twin Peaks because I think it's the best season of television ever aired.
And it's only like 8 episodes, I think. So
I'll say what's the funny thing about it is watching it before the show makes me want to watch the show.
Great.
I love that.
To be like, hey, what the fuck was going on?
That's great.
Here's what I'll say. And I also want to say, if you are tuning into this episode for the first time ever, let me explain a little bit about our show. So we watch movies that don't have happily ever after endings. And we try to find the good in them, hence the name of the show, The Silver Lining. And Firewalk with Me, again, if you've never watched the show, I think you could still listen to the episode because it doesn't spoil much about what happens in the TV show other than who killed Laura Palmer.
Right.
Which is not the whole point of the show. Yes, it's the leading thread, but again, Frost and Lynch never intended to solve that answer. So
I will say, though, when I watched the show for the first time, the reveal, I couldn't sleep that night.
It's haunting.
I watched it at like 1 a.m, hand over my mouth, and I think it's the scariest thing ever aired on network television.
I did not know, quote unquote, who killed Laura Palmer, but it makes sense. Yeah, no, your t-shirt. It makes sense when you see it and you're like, oh, of course. And the movie solidifies that. But my goal, JT, at the end of this episode is to answer any questions you may have within reason that we can explain it. Because as I told you off mic, I was like, I think anyone who comes to you and says, I know exactly every answer to Twin Peaks is full of shit.
Right.
And I think even Lynch and Frost at times would be like, I can't explain that, but it makes sense to me.
Right.
And I think that's the whole point.
Well, see, that's the thing. So I was telling Dustin, the questions, he said, just write down any questions you may have. And I was like, Dustin, that's absolutely impossible.
Right. Yeah, I figured.
It's every scene.
Yeah.
And I was like, most of my questions are going to come up when we do the playback during the episode.
Okay.
But what I do want is, unless it's important to, if it's something from the show that doesn't pertain to the movie as much, then just say it's from the show, move on. And that way we can keep it moving. Instead of for example, and I'm going to use the first one that I can think of.
Please, yeah.
Is the Blue Rose.
So the Blue Rose, I can very quickly explain.
No. Let's wait. Let's just wait. Let's get through the info start.
Okay.
And we'll go through it because it's in the first few minutes.
Sure. Go ahead. All right. Well, let's get into the info dump.
Yeah.
So the year is 1992, which I believe is only 2 years after the premiere of the show, right?
Yeah.
This thing was compacted. So JT, the season 1 ends in May of 91. Season 2 starts in September of 91.
Yeah.
So they were It was 8 episodes for the first season, I believe, and then like 22 for the second season. So this thing was so compacted. And you start to see it after like episode 9 of season 2.
It's also so funny to think that like the show as a whole, including the film, take place over the course of like 3 weeks.
Yeah.
Like each episode is a day essentially. And I saw a tweet recently that was like, can you imagine being someone who like was at Twin Peaks High School, got mono, and was just out of school for February? They come back in at the end of March and they're like, hey guys, did anything happen while I was gone?
Yeah, so it's crazy that like the phenomena that was Twin Peaks was compacted to within like 3 years of all this stuff being released. And then The Return doesn't come out until 2017. So like everyone was just left on a cliffhanger for that long.
And within 3 years, it going from the thing everyone is obsessed with to this whole bullshit thing that jumped the shark. You know, it's been critically reappraised over the years, but it's a fascinating, like tiny slice of the 90s.
Yeah. So as we mentioned, of course, the director is David Lynch, who we haven't said it yet, I don't think, but yeah, obviously rest in peace to this man. Unfortunate circumstances that led to his death that were completely avoidable. But what a legend this guy is.
Yeah.
Even as someone who didn't care for his work, but had only seen very little bit of it, now I'm starting to fully appreciate it. So there's always an entry point.
And also just a fascinating human being.
Incredibly fascinating man.
With him. Yeah.
The film stars Cheryl Lee, Maura Kelly, David Bowie, Chris Isaac, Harry Dean Stanton, Ray Wise, and Kyle MacLachlan. I mean, that cast list just sounds like the best movie I've ever seen.
That's fucking crazy. You haven't, and that's not even including Kiefer Sutherland, Miguel Ferrer.
I know. The budget was only $10 million. It managed to gross only $4 million worldwide.
Oof.
Currently has a 65% on Rotten Tomatoes. And I think anyone who's read up about this movie at all and like the critical response to it has seen this quote, but I'll read it anyways.
Yeah.
Quentin Tarantino had some thoughts about this movie and said that David Lynch has disappeared so far up his own ass that I have no desire to see another David Lynch movie until I hear something different. And I'll say this as someone who has gone through the Quentin Tarantino like fandom, and I'll come around on the other side of it and say he often has terrible takes.
He does.
So take that with what you will. And yes, you mentioned it already, Nathan, but this film did get booed at Cannes, but it was still nominated for the Palme d'Or, and it lost to The Best Intentions.
We should also mention that, this movie made $4 million and $3 million of that was in Japan.
Yep.
Like where the show had like a huge fan base.
Yep. And a drink of the film, I think it's pretty obvious. It's a fresh, hot cup of Good Morning America.
Oh, not creamed corn?
Not creamed corn. I told Nathan I was looking for creamed corn themed cocktails, and I was like, you know what? Maybe I should just not bother.
You know that's a drug.
Cream corn?
No, a drug. Coffee.
Oh yeah, caffeine is a drug.
Nicotine, yeah, absolutely caffeine.
That's a drug.
God, I can talk for 45 minutes about Kiefer Sutherland's performance in this movie.
Me too. All right. Well, let's revisit the trailer and just put ourselves in the mindsets of people that like Twin Peaks when it came out and then are seeing this trailer for the first time, how we would feel about it then.
Sure.
That score is a warm blanket, man.
Best theme song of all time. Fuck yeah, Bobby Briggs.
Gross.
Yeah, smoking is so cool.
It's so
pretty
cool.
Oh yeah, Harold Smith in his one scene.
I love his scene.
Yeah.
Again, have no idea what his character was.
Oh, we'll talk about him. Don't worry.
Yeah, this is a trailer that assumes you know who killed Laura Palmer.
Yeah. God damn, I want to go watch the movie again.
I know. I think this is the quietest I've ever been during a trailer. And they're like, don't worry, Kyle MacLachlan's here for a little bit.
Yeah. In a town like Twin Peaks, no one is innocent. Absolutely.
Mm. Good trailer.
Yeah, it doesn't give you anything.
But we should say, so Kyle MacLachlan is ostensibly like the protagonist of the TV series,
Yeah.
and felt abandoned by David Lynch during season 2 of the show.
Yeah.
So he declined to reprise his role in the majority of this movie. So that necessitated some quick rewrites, and that's why his role in the movie is essentially a glorified cameo. Very weird.
Yeah, and he also said that, like, yeah, if I did come back, I cannot be the main focal point. And
Right.
So, like, Lynch had to rewrite the script because that whole intro should have been Dale Cooper, but instead it's now Chet Desmond, played by Chris Isaacs.
Chet Desmond.
Okay, so let's get into this thing. The first note I wrote down, as I mentioned in that trailer, which was Angelo Badalamenti's score, even in these opening credits of the movie, is so damn good. And it's just like this incredibly soft jazz over TV static.
Yeah, dog.
I would argue is not indicative of where the movie goes,
No.
but it's a nice like balance, you know?
So I teased to you, Dustin, before we recorded that I have a meta read of this movie.
Okay.
And it starts here.
Okay.
David Lynch immediately wants you to know we are leaving the safety of television behind.
Yes.
We start the movie with static. We pan out to this TV being destroyed.
Yep.
It's the most overtly like on the nose symbolism I think he ever has in a movie. And I think that carries through this entire intro because everything looks cheaper than the show. The sound mix is weird. Everything in Deer Meadow has like more of an echoey quality to it. It's like we've left the polish behind because Deer Meadow is this fucked up bizarro version of Twin Peaks.
Right. And so the movie starts with a body floating down the river, just like Laura Palmer's did. And we're told it's Teresa Banks. So Teresa Banks, JT, in the show is like this character that's never seen. It's just kind of the justification of why the FBI gets involved in a murder versus like just the local state police, you know?
Because the circumstances are so similar.
The circumstances are so similar. And of course, we'll talk about the letters under the fingernails and all that good stuff. But that kind of sets into motion the whole reason why Twin Peaks, the TV show, takes place. But what I love about this movie is how fucking funny the first 30 minutes of it are. It's not apparent on first watches, but as I watch it the second time, like all the stuff with Chet Desmond is so funny compared to the rest of the film, which is deadly serious.
Yes.
And the best joke that starts is like you see Teresa Banks' body floating down the river and you see like the landscape behind it. And then it cuts to Gordon Cole, played by David Lynch. And he's behind like this landscape that looks like if you're just watching it, like, oh, that's just a shitty matte painting. Why would they make that? As if he's there on location and it zooms out to the wide shot. And he's in his office and that's just his wallpaper.
It's really funny. And it is him. His dialogue is essentially, okay, let's start the movie.
Yep. So I guess if it didn't come across to you, JT, David Lynch's character, Gordon Cole, is like the head of this FBI unit. And the earpiece he wears in his ears because he can't hear very well. So that's why he's shouting all the time and people are shouting at him.
Yeah.
But I do love that because like when it cuts to just a shot of two girls getting arrested outside of a school bus and a bunch of kids inside the school bus are crying.
It's so fucking funny.
And there's an FBI agent pointing a gun at them.
Yeah. I had questions about that. After that scene, I told Chrissy, I was like, I want to see that movie. What led us to this?
As far as I can figure out, I think the bus driver picked up two prostitutes.
Yeah, I think so. But it's just so funny that like it's not really explained and everything. And then when he gets the call from Gordon and he's like, what is it, the Oregon line? It's so fucking funny. I wrote it down. God. Oh, well, yeah, when he says, he calls him over the radio and he goes, I need you to come out and meet me. And he goes, okay, Gordon. He goes, Oregon.
Oregon.
That's exactly how his character is in the show, just so you know, Jake.
I just also enjoy the inconsistency of like certain things cut to Gordon's heart and he can hear it. Like there's a bit where like Chet whispers something to him and then says something that he yells, but Gordon hears both things. Yep. That's just a very funny bit of inconsistency there.
And that's where we get introduced to Chris Isaac as Chet Desmond, really, and his new partner, played by Kiefer Sutherland, Sam Stanley. And the way he's introduced is so, again, another funny gag where David Lynch goes, Chet gives Sam Stanley the glad hand. He's come over from Spokane. Sam's the man. I'm like, wow, the rhyming. Why
it's so funny. And it's a great little callback to the show because there's one throwaway line in the first episode of Twin Peaks. Dale is performing an autopsy on Laura Palmer, and he said he talks into his recorder and he says, Diane, I want you to send this over to Albert's team. Don't go to Sam.
Yeah.
Because implying that Sam's a little bit of a dumbass.
Well, we'll talk about Kiefer Sutherland in just a minute here, but I do want to mention, I want to know what would happen if Gordon Cole met M. Night Shyamalan's character in Trap, because he says, her name is Lil. She's my mother's sister's girl. I'm like, oh, so you're an uncle. Okay. Yeah. That's what we're JT, what did you make of Lil, the woman in red here?
Well, that's exactly why I paused it, because this was the big moment where I was
all right, I just gotta watch this.
Yeah, exactly. Then I watched it, and then I'm like, okay, well now I have more questions than answers, and then we never see her again.
Yeah.
So for the listeners, she does this weird little dance. She's got this red dress on. She's stomping. She's got a blue rose on her lapel. And the next scene is Kiefer Sutherland being like, that was crazy. What was that all about?
What the fuck was that? Yeah.
And Chet explains that all of the things she was doing were like code things. Like she's got a sour face, so we're going to have trouble with the local police. The warden's uncle must be in federal prison or something like that.
Everything she was doing was a code, basically.
Yeah. And what I love is that it feels, again, like a meta joke about David Lynch sort of poking fun at the kinds of fan theories and conspiracies that they cooked up while the show was running. He's like, not everything needs an explanation, because sometimes the explanation is silly.
Yeah. And the only thing that Chet doesn't give an answer to Sam Stanley about is the blue rose. So this was something you asked about, JT, and very quickly I can kind of explain it.
Because it's not explained for another 25 years.
Yeah, it's not explained really into the TV show, but it comes up a bit in the season 2, I think.
That's
but it's
right.
explained fully in the return. A blue rose is just something that does not occur naturally in nature. Roses are red. Blue roses don't occur naturally in nature. And also kind of a symbol of like unexplained extraterrestrial things or supernatural things.
A blue rose is literally an X-file.
Yeah,
This predates the X-Files, where they're just like, the blue rose are these weird cases.
Yes. And so they're sent out, Chris Isaac and Kiefer Sutherland, to figure out what's going on with the Teresa Banks murder.
Yeah.
Lil is giving them all these codes of like, you'll have a rough time with the local police there.
Yeah.
And so they get there, and then this deputy and this receptionist are like just making fun of him, saying, once you have a seat, it'll be quite a while before we have to help you.
They don't have fresh coffee. No one is welcoming or accommodating. It truly is like Twin Peaks gone wrong. Because Twin Peaks is this picturesque place where everyone is so, welcoming, and they lay out donuts for every person who visits.
Every scene of Twin Peaks starts with somebody bringing in coffee and pastries, like every single scene. And it's what you would expect, because like in all these movies, and typically like when the FBI gets involved, the local police push back. So like, well, no, we want this case, whatever.
Yeah, this is our jurisdiction.
Exactly. The opposite is true in Twin Peaks, where like Dale Cooper shows up. He's like, I'm the FBI. And they're like, all right, well, come in. Come on. We'll help you out. Here's all the evidence.
It's my favorite thing in the world how often Dale Cooper will be like, we have to arrest this guy because I had a dream about it. And the sheriff is like, yes, sir, Mr. Cooper, you're the coolest guy I've ever met. I love you.
It really is like that. It's so fucking fun. Because like he's the third episode of the show, I think it is. Dale's like, there's this Tibetan method of like deciphering clues where like I'm gonna throw rocks at glass bottles out in the woods.
Lucy, I need you to read a name from a list, and each name you read, I'll throw a rock at a bottle, and if the bottle breaks, that's our suspect.
And that's literally what, and they're all like, okay, sounds good to me.
All right, that makes sense. Yeah, absolutely. We should read more about Tibet, you guys.
Yeah, that's exactly what the show is like.
I love it so much. And I have this theory that I think kind of carries through in The Return, that every time a murder is committed by Bob, it makes the world a darker place. It like infects the town that it happened in.
Sure.
I think you see that with Teresa Banks here. And I think you see that in The Return when we see that Twin Peaks kind of sucks 25 years later. People have kind of given up hope.
Yeah. And not to spoil too much about The Return, but yeah, when who is Cheryl Lee? I don't want to talk about the last 2 episodes because it'll give it away, but that town is also like on the verge of darkness as
collapse.
Well. Yes. Yeah. So real quick, JT, because I feel like it's going to come up later on, but since we already brought up his name now, we'll talk about it. But Bob, who is played by Frank Silva, he's the man in the denim jacket with the long hair. Without knowing, obviously knowing too much about him, what did you make of him?
I had absolutely no idea what to think. Like, I knew he was horrible.
Yeah.
But as far as like, was this person real? And I think that's okay. So I was coming in and out of like, because the way it was shot and the way that Laura Palmer was acting and stuff, it's like, what is happening for real and what is not?
Right.
There's such psychological things. I was like, what's happening is horrible, but I don't know if it was Bob. I don't know if it was Leland. I don't know if it really happened, because like the scene where she just got the picture of the door and she runs home to check her diary because the old lady and the kid said to, he knows where it's at.
Yeah. He's under the fan now.
She runs home. She looks in her room and she sees Bob.
Yep.
Then what I thought is that she immediately runs out screaming, and then Leland walks out and I'm like, so obviously I knew Leland may have been maybe like abusive, or like stern and abusive, but then you got Bob, who is obviously, it's a lot worse than that.
Yeah.
And I was like, so what, like, is Bob real? Is Bob not? Is that what she sees? It's so fucking wild.
So one of my favorite pieces of ambiguity in the show is, and it becomes less ambiguous, I think, as the mythology goes on.
Yeah.
But the general idea is that Bob is this evil entity that has possessed Leland Palmer and wants to possess Laura.
Yes.
But there is a moment in season 2 after the killer has been revealed and everything where they're talking about it. And Albert, Miguel Ferrer's character, is basically like, you don't seriously believe that Leland Palmer was possessed by an evil spirit. And Dale Cooper says, is it easier to believe that than a man did this to his own daughter?
Yep.
And it makes you wonder, like, is there a chance that, like, this is an elaborate fantasy that they've all concocted to make it palatable for them, like to make it easier for, and you could, watching this movie without watching the show, I think there's a read that Laura is creating a fantasy world for herself to escape.
Yes.
Because the reality is just too terrible.
So I want to try to run through very briefly the whole idea of Bob. And Nathan, you've seen the stuff more often than me, so maybe you can clarify some things. But I think talking through it will not only help me and JT fully understand, but it'll help the listener too if they're confused.
Okay, so it all starts with the Trinity test.
Yeah, it all starts with the atomic bomb going off in the 40s, okay? That's not a joke. This is not a bit. It starts with the Trinity test.
I was hoping that's what you'd go back to.
So essentially, Bob was born, quote unquote, when the Trinity test happened. The atomic bomb kind of created a ripple effect across the cosmos and through different dimensions that created Bob. And Bob is essentially the root of all evil, basically, this cosmic form.
As Miguel Ferrer puts it in the show, Bob is the evil that men do.
Right, the evil that men do. And so he had a partner named Mike. Now, Mike decided he didn't want to be evil anymore and cut off his arm. And the one-armed man that you see in this movie, the guy that's in the truck screaming at Laura and Leland,
right?
That is Mike in the physical form possessing another guy named, what's his name?
Philip Gerard.
Philip Gerard. He's possessing that guy. And would it surprise you if I told you that the arm that he cut off is represented by a little person in this movie who talks backwards and wears a little red suit? Would that surprise you at all?
No.
Okay, great. So you're on board with accepting answers, and I think
this makes sense.
Yeah, this all makes perfect sense. And so there's kind of this battle between the two because the cream corn of it all, also known as Garmonbozia,
is
essentially the residuals that are left over after Bob or any of these people in the Black Lodge, which we'll talk about that too, kind of takes over a person in the real world, basically, and kills them.
Yeah, it's a physical representation of pain and sorrow,
but that they feast off of, basically.
Which that asks so many other questions. I still can't figure out if the little man is evil or not, or if he's just like kind of walking both sides.
I think there's a bit of that too, because he appears in the Black Lodge and the Red Room, which we'll talk about later. But
cool, those are two different things.
Yeah, it is. I'll explain it. We'll explain it all. I think some of the answers, though, of like why is it the way that it is just that's the answer. Like, why is it cream corn? That's just what it is, and you just kind of have to accept that and move on. But that's kind of what the whole point of Bob is. He wants his Garmonbozia.
Trust me, my biggest question is not why did they choose cream corn.
Sure.
I will say that.
I just want to answer that for the listener.
Ashley's favorite moment from us watching Twin Peaks together is the scene when Mrs. Chalfont's grandson opens up his hand
and he's got a bunch of cream corn.
It's just full of cream corn, and then it's gone in the next shot. And Ashley goes, "What the hell was that?" And I said, "Oh, cream corn comes back in a huge way."
Way.
She started crying laughing. She said, "What the fuck are you talking about?"
All right, so that kind of explains Bob. And Bob has possessed Leland when he was like a kid, basically.
Yeah.
And one of the big questions that people should have when they're watching the TV show and the movie is, how much of what Leland Palmer is doing is Leland?
Yeah.
How much of it is Bob? Because I think Leland Palmer is a representation to me of that kind of 50s Americana nuclear family dad.
Yeah.
Where like from the outside, he's the provider. He's nice to his kids. He's nice to his wife.
He loves to swing dance.
He loves swing dancing in the TV show.
That motherfucker loves to dance.
But when you get him indoors in his own home, he's a monster, as evidenced by we're not going to eat until you wash your dirty hands and stuff like that.
Well, and in the show, it's played a little more, there's more division there. Like there's so many scenes where like he's clearly been taken over by Bob. Like he'll be, crying, and then all of a sudden he starts smiling and he's giggling like a monster. And in this movie, the division is a lot blurrier, up to and including the sequence where he drugs Sarah Palmer.
Yeah.
Like it's implied.
And she's accepted it, which we'll talk about that when we get there.
I mean, yeah, and Sarah seems complicit in all of this.
Yeah. And I don't want to get too much into the weeds about what happens in the return. That kind of explains more about Bob. And
sure.
We're going to talk about Judy here in a second. I know we're not supposed to talk about her, but we'll talk about her a little bit.
We're not going to talk about Judy.
We'll talk a little bit about that. But what I wanted to get to was, the division between how much of this is Bob and how much is Leland. And so the whole point of what Bob is trying to do is Laura Palmer's in the way, basically. If he can't possess her too, he wants to kill her.
Right.
And that's what she's starting to realize it throughout the movie is, this guy is trying to kill me. It's Bob. I don't know what Bob is.
He wants to corrupt me. The
pivotal scene that we'll talk about that I'll put a trigger warning in front of before we do. But that is her coming to the realization that it's not just Bob. Bob is who she sees doing these horrible things. But then eventually the mirror breaks and it's her seeing, spoiler alert, Leland doing the things to her that she has been experiencing happening to her. So that's why he says at the end of the movie, I read your diary. I always thought you knew it was me. Meaning Bob assumed that Laura always knew it was Leland doing that to her.
What's fascinating, though, is Bob says, I always thought you knew it was me.
Right.
Leland says, I never knew you knew it was me.
Right. You're absolutely right. I got those backwards.
Which I think is terrifying,
horrific,
and sad, and asks a lot of questions that are still sort of ambiguous in a way that is almost protective.
So it's not just Bob possessing Leland to do these horrible acts. It's also Leland doing these horrible acts, but they're doing the same thing.
And you're supposed to question how much is one side or the other.
Yeah, is Bob just giving him permission to be what he already is? Yeah.
The beautiful scene, because I don't think this is a spoiler at this point if you're wondering, but in season 2 of the show, where the show kind of reaches its peak, there's a incredible monologue. Twin Peaks. There's an incredible monologue from Leland Palmer. When Bob, quote unquote, is defeated, quote unquote.
Yeah. Bob announces like, "Oh, you guys are going to see how much this hurts Leland when I leave his body." Basically.
Yeah.
It's Ray Wise's finest acting of his career.
It's incredible.
He's so incredible.
And so that explains what Bob's whole agenda is. He wants to possess Laura Palmer, and if he can't, he wants to kill her. And the meta sense of that, because I think you'll find this interesting, JT. Frank Silva, who plays Bob, was not an actor.
Yeah.
In fact, he worked on Twin Peaks as a set decorator in the art department. And one day while they were filming the TV show early on, they're filming a scene in Laura Palmer's bedroom. Frank Silva thinks he's out of the frame of the camera and ducks behind Laura's bed. But David Lynch ends up filming the mirror. And in the mirror, he sees Frank Silva crouched down behind Laura Palmer's bed and thinks that's fucking terrifying.
Yeah.
And then approaches him and says, "Hey, Frank, I know you're not an actor, but can we maybe do something with you in the show? Like, can we create a character around you?" And he goes, "Yeah, sure."
Yeah.
And so that tells me they never planned on doing anything like what the show ended up being.
Correct.
Which is having Bob and this cosmic entity, all this stuff.
In fact, there's a story where the actress who played Ronette Pulaski was on set and saw Bob in the corner, Frank Silva in the corner one day, and asked David Lynch, like, "Hey, what's this guy's deal?" And Lynch told her, "He's the bad guy, but don't tell anyone."
Yeah. Yeah, so like they created whole cloth, the whole impetus of the show eventually where it goes to, and especially the return.
Out of a blooper.
Out of a blooper, yeah. And he dies only like 3 years after this movie comes out.
Yeah.
And yet still has a fairly prominent role in the return. But
yeah, that's fascinating too.
I won't spoil that for anybody. But so that's where Bob comes from, basically. And that explains all of that stuff. So back to the Chet Desmond of it all. I just want to talk about this frayed photo that the sheriff of Deer Meadows has on his wall.
Yeah.
Because his last name is Cable, Sheriff Cable.
Uh-huh.
And there's a picture of him for the newspaper bending a rebar. And it says Cable bend steel.
and there's a deleted scene from the movie where he does this to show off to Chet.
Dude.
And then Chet beats the shit out of him.
Okay, so the missing pieces, which is a 90-minute film, quote unquote, that is just the deleted scenes from this movie.
Yeah.
That David Lynch edited together. Yeah, there's a scene where, because the whole thing is Chet and Sam want to take Teresa's body back to the FBI so they can do proper, autopsies on it and whatnot.
Yeah.
And the sheriff of Deer Meadows is like, you had to fist fight me to do that. And
Yeah.
he bends rebar in front of him. And then the scene's like 10 minutes long. And then
It's
just
so long.
Chris Isaac's just beating the shit out of this guy.
It's so funny, but it totally makes sense why they cut it.
Yeah.
Yeah, JT, the deleted scenes from this movie are also considered canon.
Yes.
Like in The Return, there are references to scenes that most people haven't watched.
Yep.
Which is crazy to me.
Cool.
That's fully David Lynch, though. That's exactly what I expect from him.
We need to talk about Chris Isaac's performance because I think
He's great. I love him. I will hear no slander.
I love him too, but it is one of the most evident not an actor in a movie performances I've ever seen, which I think may be why Lynch enjoyed using him.
Can I give you a rebuttal?
Absolutely.
Have you considered the fact that he's hot? Have you considered that?
Oh, I considered it.
Oh, okay.
I absolutely considered it. I considered all those Wicked Games, and his hair reaches up to heaven. But he and Kiefer Sutherland are giving such weird, detached performances that feel so at odds with the heart on their sleeve performances from Twin Peaks, and it feels like it's intentional.
Oh, 100% intentional. I mean,
because he's meaner than Cooper.
Oh, 100%.
He grabs this dude by the nose. He makes Sam spill coffee on himself. The thinnest coffee I've ever seen.
I know.
Real quick, is there any characters, like, or at least prominent characters in this movie that are not in the show?
Most of them.
Well, I mean, when you get to Twin Peaks, pretty much every character you get introduced to is in the show.
Yeah.
Everyone outside of Twin Peaks, like all in this whole 30-minute intro with Chet Desmond, all that, the only person really that appears in the show is
Gordon.
Gordon Cole, and then Harry Dean Stanton shows up in The Return.
Yeah.
But he's not in the first 2 seasons of the show.
So these two here, the two detectives, the sheriff, everybody is
not from the show.
None of them come back.
None of them from the show or
Nope.
in the
Nope.
new show. Okay.
Nope. This was supposed to be Kyle MacLachlan, but he didn't want to be typecasted as just being this FBI agent over and over again in movies and TV.
Right.
And so he's like, I'll be in the movie, but you get me for like 4 days, which is why he's barely in the movie.
Okay.
So he turns this down and then does Showgirls and Flintstones right after.
Hell yeah. Great career move in my mind.
He did it. I also love, one of the things that's so haunting about when Laura Palmer's body is found in the show is she seems like this frozen princess, right?
Yep.
Like she's perfectly preserved and looks like a porcelain doll. Another thing that kind of is removing us from the warmth, quote unquote, of the show is that Teresa Banks looks like she died in terror.
Yep.
Her body is already decomposing.
Her eyes are open.
Yes.
Laura's is closed.
Laura looks at peace. Right.
Yeah. So what I will say too about Kiefer Sutherland is I think his performance is phenomenal in this
agree.
movie. Like,
oh, he's such a weird little guy.
he's handsome as shit. He's doing a performance I've never seen him do before.
I agree.
Like when they're at the diner and like he's doing like the little ticks and eye twitches, I was like, his character is naive yet capable.
Yeah.
And it, to me, seems like he may be on the spectrum. Maybe that's how he's playing it.
Yeah, something like that. He's just very focused on the job.
Yeah.
One of the bits that makes me laugh so hard is after that tense moment in the sheriff's station, they leave and he stops Desmond and he goes, Chet, as far as I can figure, this whole office, furniture included, is worth $27,000. And they just kind of stare at each other for a second.
This movie's fucking amazing. I love it so much.
Yeah, it's good.
But yeah, they do an autopsy on Teresa Banks, and what they find is a scrap of paper under one of her fingernails with the letter T, I believe. Is this one?
Mm-hmm.
So JC, this comes back a couple times in the TV show. Laura Palmer's got a letter shoved under her fingernails as well that I think is a B or an R. I can't remember.
R.
I don't think this is much of a spoiler, but it's revealed that it's Bob spelling out his name, Robert or Robertson, to kind of like leave behind a trail, basically. And even though I hate fingernail trauma in movies.
I can't look at this scene. Oof.
The score in this scene is fucking great. It's so eerie. It's like played in reverse.
Yeah.
Ooh, it's so good. But yeah, that's pretty much it. They work on this autopsy until like 3 a.m. and they decide to go get some food.
We cut to a commercial break. There's a couple of like fades to black in this movie that feel like an intentional, okay, we'll be back after these messages.
Yeah.
Going back to Kiefer Sutherland's performance. Again, we talked about how like he's maybe on the spectrum and stuff. To me, it sums up to where he's so matter of fact.
Yes.
And it comes off as really charming and funny because he's like, Chet's like, oh, it's late. He's like, no, it's early.
It's so early. It's 3 a.m.
He says, Mr. Desmond, when are we going to get some sleep? It's 3 a.m. And he goes, we're not. We're going to go get some food.
Yeah.
And he's like, okay.
And he has such a need to be part of the conversation. Like he wants to be one of the gang.
Yep.
The bit that I love is whenever they have the coffee with Carl at the trailer park and he goes, we sure do need a good wake me up, don't we, Agent Desmond? We sure need a good wake me up, don't we, Agent? He says it again. Like.
Yeah.
I love it. So yeah, they go to this diner and we get introduced to Irene, the waitress. And I love Irene. I think she's great.
Oh, she's great.
Would you like to hear about the specials? We
don't have any. But yeah, so they're just basically asking like, did you know Teresa Banks? Have you heard from her or anything? Do you know what she was like?
Mm-hmm.
And she goes, yeah, I think she was caught up doing drugs, whatever. And she goes, I don't do drugs. And I love that Sam Stanley goes, well, nicotine's a drug because she's smoking.
Yeah.
He goes, caffeine's a drug.
Those are legal.
She calls him a towhead.
Who's the towhead?
That's got to be David Lynch, like pulling from like 50s slang, right?
Oh,
like,
yeah. It's an old school, for a pale guy with blonde hair. Yeah.
Okay. All right. No, these two. Explain.
There's nothing to explain. It's just a man with his rich French girlfriend. I don't know what more you need from that.
Yeah.
All right. Moving on.
Are you talking about that little girl that got killed?
Yep. That's pretty much it, JT. Some of these side characters, they're just there because they're interesting faces, and that's pretty much it.
Okay.
Unsettling auras.
All right. Moving on.
So they go to Harry Dean Stanton's trailer park.
Yeah.
Man, what a guy. Harry Dean, the man.
One of the greatest character actors that's ever lived. I love him.
Absolutely.
God, what all has he been? I know I've seen him in. I know he's in Red Dawn, Aliens,
Paris, Texas.
Yeah, he's been all over the place.
Yeah.
Sadly passed away, but one of the greatest faces in a movie.
Listeners may want to check out his country album. Used to incredible silent effect in Seven Psychopaths.
Yep.
One of my favorite weird little performances from him.
Yeah. So yeah, they go to the trailer park. Harry Dean Stanton runs the trailer park, and they want to see Teresa's trailer.
So while they're looking around, the dumpster witch from Mulholland Drive walks in.
So I was going to say, because do you remember this scene, JT, where they're in the trailer and this woman covered in soot just kind of walks in?
Yeah, and this is like another thing where I'm just like, what the fuck just happened? Because now we have old dude like in tears.
Yeah.
God, I love this moment. It's basically.
I was like, who is this?
So let me ask you a question, and then your answer will dictate where we go about the soot-covered woman, because you've seen The Return.
See, I thought it was just bruises all over her.
I think she looks like, to me, like one of the woodsmen from The Return.
I love this.
Which would explain why Harry D. Stanton cries when he sees her.
Yeah.
But, okay, I don't want to get into what the woodsmen are really in The Return, because that'll spoil it for everything. But JT, just know that it may be a tie to something to come to The Return later on, which is almost insignificant, really,
right,
in the grand scheme of things. But
in this,
you could also take it as like maybe he's just remembering Teresa because of like the polar opposites of like Teresa was this like beautiful young woman, she was perfectly porcelain skinned, and then like this woman comes in and she's the exact opposite, soot covered, older,
And Carl is both. He seems to exist in the in between place from Twin Peaks and Deer Meadow, because he's grumpy and abrasive, but he's also kind and welcoming and brings them coffee and chats with them. And my take on this has always been, he's so scared that this death is going to destroy everything. Like that this is going to ruin his livelihood. That he's worried that he's a suspect, and the bit where he starts tearing up and he tells them, I've gone places. I just want to stay where I am.
Yeah.
I mean, I've gone places could mean I've seen the other side where all the dark things happen, or it could be, I've lived a life and now I just want to be who I am.
Yeah.
I could see that as being soot. Yeah, that's interesting.
Or it could be war, like it could be war related.
Yeah, totally.
That's what I took it as.
Yeah. So they talk about in these photos of Teresa Banks that she has this ring on, the owl ring.
Yeah.
So JT, I got to ask, because I'm going to ask you this a couple of times throughout the episode. Do you want to know about the ring, or you think you're better off not knowing?
Considering we're 20 minutes in
to the movie, yeah,
and we're an hour into the episode.
Oh, this is a long episode,
and I have a hard out at 3.
I know. We got a little bit of time, but
if you can give me the Reader's Digest version of it.
Yeah.
Oh, I love this because I'm still fuzzy on the ring.
So here's my understanding of how the ring operates. And I've seen some people online talk about this too. I think it's that whoever has the ring on, it protects them from Bob.
Yes.
Because we see that in the return too. And I also think when you take the ring off of that person, it just sets them to being able to get transferred to either the waiting room or the Black Lodge, which we'll talk about later.
Yeah.
It also, I think, just guarantees that, well, I'll say this. I don't understand why Dale tells her in the waiting room, don't take the ring.
That's what I was just about to say. She was specifically told not to take the black ring.
Yeah. I don't know if I understand that. Nathan, you got any read on that?
Yeah, I go back and forth on, am I meant to believe? Well, so I think that scene with Dale appearing in her dream is him stuck, spoilers for the show, for a 30-year-old episode of television.
Yeah.
I think that scene takes place after the end of the series.
Okay.
I think because time kind of doesn't really mean anything in the Black Lodge.
With the waiting room.
With the waiting room, yes.
Yeah.
And he's... This sounds so... I mean, this is nonsense what we're recording.
It does sound crazy to just talk about.
But I think that's... I go back and forth on if that's supposed to be his doppelganger or not. Because it is weird that he tells her not to take the ring. Although, it could be maybe he believes that her dying is better than whatever waits for her on the other side. But I go back and forth on that.
We do kind of see the implications of that with the last 2 episodes of The Return.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's hard to say for sure. And this is what I'm saying, JT. I don't think any one person has the answers, but I think we can make educated guesses, basically. And whatever thing you come up with, I think has some merit. And I think David Lynch would probably say the same thing.
And then we would be like, how are you talking to us? You're dead.
I noticed this time, Nathan, because I watched this movie with headphones in this time. You hear a lot of the arm making the mouth noises throughout this movie.
Yeah.
And I noticed it for the first time here when Chet Desmond goes outside and he sees the power lines here in the trailer park.
Mm-hmm.
And this comes up a bit in The Return too, because Gordon Cole eventually comes to this. Is it this trailer park he comes to?
It's the new Fat Trout trailer park. Yeah.
Right. Okay, just making sure.
Yeah, Carl moves a little bit closer, but still has the same job.
Absolutely. And then, so Chet Desmond finds the owl ring underneath Teresa's trailer
and vanishes
into thin air.
So the 6 on the light pole, it comes up a few times.
It sure does.
And that's another one of those reoccurring things where I'm like, what is this is significant?
It comes up in The Return as well. I don't know if David Lynch had these ideas in mind when making Twin Peaks the show and the movie, but a lot of things that seem innocuous in the TV show or just like he brings attention to but doesn't do anything with.
Yeah.
He eventually returns to in The Return.
Yes.
And I don't know if that's because he had ideas planted there or if he's like, this is just... A lot of what David Lynch seemed to do as a director is just give you things that would evoke an emotion, whether it was explainable or made sense in the moment.
That being said, I feel like there is certainly an implication that the beings on the other side can move through electricity or can channel electricity.
He had a big thing about electricity. Yeah. One of his unforeseen projects, the project he wanted to make the most,
Ronnie Rocket,
was Ronnie Rocket, about a boy who was made of electricity.
Yeah.
And he could never get it. That was always his plan was, all right, I did Lost Highway. Now I'm making Ronnie Rocket. I did Inland Empire. Now I'm making Ronnie Rocket. He just never did. So
Dune really inspired me to make Ronnie Rocket.
He definitely had something with electricity. There's a great video. I don't know how much David Lynch would agree with it, but there's a pretty good video I watched after I watched The Return on YouTube.
Yeah.
It's this guy that's like for 4 hours just breaking down what he thinks Twin Peaks is about. And it's got some stuff in there.
It is. There's some really great stuff in there. What I don't love is that there's several times where he's like, definitively, this is what it means.
Yeah.
And it's like, no.
That I don't like. But he's got some good theories. I'll say that.
Yeah.
Real quick. So when Chet finds the ring, he had a conversation with the guy saying like, okay, so that's the sheriff's or that's the deputy's house.
Yeah.
Or trailer over there. And then her trailer is over here.
Right.
Yep.
Then he turns around in the opposite direction
Mm-hmm.
and comes to this trailer.
Yep.
Which we have no idea who this is. And that's where the ring's under.
So there is an answer, and I will say it is related to two characters we see later on in the movie, and also two characters that reappear in the TV show in the second season.
Yes.
The old woman that is in the Black Lodge later with the little kid,
Right.
Mrs. Chalfont.
Mrs. Chalfont, or Mrs. Tresman, however you want to call her.
Yeah.
That is her trailer and her grandson's trailer right here that he finds the ring under.
Yeah.
How they got to the Black Lodge from here and how they reappear in Twin Peaks the show, I could not tell you.
Yeah. Mrs. Chalfont, famously, that's Frances Bay, right? Who
From
we also
In
talked
the Mouth of
about
Madness?
in The Mouth of Madness.
Yep,
Yeah.
yep. So yeah, he finds the ring under the trailer and then disappears. And then we cut to Philadelphia, which I think is great because it says Philadelphia is the lower third, and then it pans up to the Liberty Bell. And I
Yeah.
just thought that was that's got to be a David Lynch joke. He's like-
Yeah.
And then it's 27 minutes into the movie before we finally get introduced to our hero, Dale Cooper.
Who walks in and announces the date.
The date and the time. And I love that Gordon Cole kind of looks at him and then looks at his watch like, all right, it is, isn't it?
Correct.
And then, it's like, this is about the dream I had. And JT, I'm sure you were in this position, but even as somebody who watched the show,
Yeah.
if you watched the show, or if you didn't watch the show and then you saw the movie,
You might be a redneck.
this bit with the camera and the security footage has got to be.
I don't know.
Yeah.
But also think about it from my point of view. At this point, I'm just like,
I'm along for the ride.
Yeah.
let's just finish the movie. Like
He's afraid that there's going to be two of him because
Yes.
he's had a dream about a doppelganger, which we eventually will meet in the show.
Yes.
And I love this sequence because he's just, it is such an almost childlike fear, right? Like you're worried that out of the corner of your eye, your reflection is going to change or something.
Yeah.
I took it as, again, we saw the static in the beginning of the movie.
Mhm.
We had the light pole. So I thought it was something with televisions is what my unexperienced Twin Peaks brain was going towards.
Sure.
So I thought it was like cameras, television, stuff like that.
Oh, I like that too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There may be some meta explanation there. I think it's just because Dale is so in tune with the supernatural and the unexplainable in the TV show that when he says, I had a dream about this thing, it almost always ends up being true or leading him down the path to something that is inevitably going to be the answer to his question. And
Yes.
I think that he's just in tune some way with it. And I think it's also as evidenced by the fact that his character is like the most pure throughout the entire show, I think.
And yet he can't not interfere.
Yes.
Dale Cooper has such a strict code that he will make things worse in the pursuit of making things better.
In fact, the last couple episodes of that show where you think we've reached a finale and there's still 2 more episodes to go
Yes.
is an exemplification of that, of him being like, this is not good enough. I can make things better, and ultimately making things way worse.
This is also when David Bowie comes in the world's largest pants and a Bayou accent.
So let's talk about Jeffries real quick. So in the show, JT.
So he's the Goblin King. And
in the show, he is mentioned but never seen.
Right.
Like, oh, Detective Jeffries just disappeared one day. He does. Okay. I'm going to talk.
I was about to say, JT, can I spoil one thing about the return?
Please do. Because JT's going to be like,
Would it surprise you to learn that since David Bowie was secretly dying of cancer, he asked David Lynch to recast his part, and David Lynch recast Philip Jeffries with a giant teapot?
A giant tea kettle that spurts out riddles via smoke.
And still speaks with a New Orleans accent.
He does, but he also only appears in a motel room that's only accessible via a door that leads to the backyard of a house that's located above a mystical convenience store. Would all of that surprise you?
No.
He sounds so defeated.
No.
That's almost exactly what Ashley said when I told her last night.
He appears as a tea kettle. Yeah.
It's just so It's so exhausting.
So this is a weird bit of the movie. This is a weird bit of the movie.
Well, I paused it here because this is when like that review that I had, or that the review that I read, rang true the most.
Oh, where The Weeknd shows up for a minute?
Oh my God.
Jesus.
And Sutter Kane
Yep.
as one of the woodsmen.
Just when it's someone else's nightmare, it's just a series of images with static going through it of stuff that makes no sense.
I think I can explain it.
We got a bowl of cream corn.
In the missing pieces, you learn that these were two separate scenes that then Lynch overlaid. There is a full scene that was shot of David Bowie explaining, I spied on one of their meetings. They were above a convenience store. They're pure evil.
Yes.
We have to stop them. And then there's a full scene of this meeting where the characters just have a weird conversation of him being like, here's my Garmonbozia. This is a Formica table.
I can explain it. I think I can explain all of this. I think I can.
And they decided to overlay it.
So here's what I think. And Nathan, you tell me what you think too. But this is the Black Lodge, right?
Yeah.
This is the only time throughout the entire Twin Peaks live action anything that we see the Black Lodge, as far as I can remember.
I don't know. I think we maybe see part of it in the finale of the original series.
Okay.
I think that dark copy of the waiting room may be
okay.
Part of it.
So now we can actually break this down, JT. So actually, there's a character in the show who's a Native American that works for the Twin Peaks Police Department named Hawk.
Yeah.
And Hawk kind of explains this idea of what the Black Lodge and the White Lodge are. That's essentially the very easiest way I can describe it is kind of a heaven, kind of a hell.
Yeah. A meeting place for good and evil spirits.
Right. And so the red room with the drapes and the checkered floor that you see throughout the movie and throughout the TV show is known as the red room or the waiting room.
Which is basically purgatory.
Yes. Every person that dies goes to the waiting room, and you kind of have to defeat your evil version, your doppelganger, or prove that you
face your darkest parts. Yeah,
exactly. And then if you succeed, you go to the White Lodge, which I don't think they ever definitively say in the return that we are in the White Lodge in that black and white room.
Yeah,
but I think that's kind of the general consensus, is that is where the White Lodge is.
Yeah,
because we never see it in the regular TV show. And
I still cannot tell you what the purple zone is.
Nope, couldn't tell you.
Okay, don't throw another color right now.
Sure.
So throw another color.
I think this is the Black Lodge because we see Bob there. We see the arm, which is the little person. Mm-hmm. Now, the Formica table, I saw a theory online, and I think this is the answer.
There's a hole in the table.
There's a hole in the table, and Formica is typically colored green.
Yeah.
And I think the reason there's a hole in the table is because part of the owl ring that is green is made from the Formica table.
I agree with that.
Now, what that implies, I do not know. I don't know what the significance of the table itself is.
That just imbues it with power from the other side.
Exactly. And then, we see Bob here. We see the arm, which is the man from another place, this guy right here, JT, you're seeing.
Right.
But I also think the fact that there's a TV static that overlays it, I think this is just Jeffries losing his mind basically in this moment.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And also the fact that he disappears again, I think it's just like him kind of just poking out through the other side, kind of like the Flash in Batman v Superman, like, oh, am I too early? And then just fucking fades away.
Don't you fucking dare compare these two movies.
God damn.
Coop, you're too early. Lois is the key.
So you talked about how Bob's the all evil that men do. Mm-hmm. Then you got the little guy who's a severed arm. Uh-huh. Are these other people that are here? Do they have...
That's Miss Chalfont, who we talked about on in the trailer, and her grandson.
Right, but is there any kind of representation of a cosmic whatever?
Nope.
I think they're demonic in nature. I think they're evil. I don't think they're actively causing anything evil.
Yeah.
I just think that they're attracted to darkness because like there's that bit where Leland goes to meet the girls at the motel and the little boy is just dancing around in the parking lot. I think that they're just sort of activated by all of this.
Yeah.
The woodsmen, who we see briefly here, seem to be agents of Bob, possibly.
Yeah.
Sort of almost like antibodies from the other side. There's a sequence in The Return that is one of the scariest things I've ever seen involving them.
Uh-huh. But I think this is just what this is. This is basically how these characters are people that either lived in the real world and got there because they didn't succeed in the waiting room, or they were always in there. It's just worlds overlapping, basically.
This is also the moment when the little boy takes off his mask and he's a capuchin monkey.
This fucking monkey
who says Judy.
Yep.
And
we're not going to talk about Judy.
We're not going to talk about Judy. This is also the moment when Ashley says to me, "What have you done to JT?" Like, what?
This is the craziest scene of the movie, though, right? Like,
It
this
is.
has to be the one where everyone is like, "What in the fuck am I watching?" Right?
Yeah.
But again, as someone who's watched it all now and is revisiting the movie, I'm like, no, this all makes sense. I get it.
no.
I don't think it all makes sense, but yes.
No, not all of it, but I mean, as a whole, it makes sense.
Yeah.
Again, how did David Bowie even get a chance to view or see a meeting?
That's my big question is like, it appears, he says it like he spied on one of their meetings, but it's such a closed room that I feel like he must have like looked through a doorway. Like,
I think I can answer that too.
please.
In season 2 of the show, we see that you can get to the waiting room theoretically by literally walking into it.
Yeah.
And I think also it's because we talked about how time doesn't really make sense in Twin Peaks.
Sure.
It could be that he's already been the tea kettle in the return and is, returning back from that. Like,
Dustin, can I tell you, I love so much that like I've been sitting with Twin Peaks for almost a decade now, and you like mainlined it 2 months ago, and you're already like out moldering me on this shit.
well, it's only because I like after every episode, I would just look at the episode discussions
Reddit and
on
the
Reddit,
wikis
and I'm like, oh, okay, that makes sense. That makes sense. Okay, but I think it's also that just time doesn't make a lot of sense. But also, if you watch the missing pieces, the scene with Jeffrey is extended a bit to where maybe the craziest thing I've ever seen in all of Twin Peaks is we see a little brief glimpse of it right there at the end before he disappears. He's screaming with static over him. In the missing pieces, you see that he's screaming and it cuts to he's back at the hotel in New Orleans.
Yeah.
And there's like an explosion of soot around him.
A burn mark around him.
And
Yeah.
he says, "It came out of my ass," or something like that.
It says it came out of me or so. Yeah.
And it's just like, what was that about? No idea. But I don't think there's an answer of how he got to the Black Lodge. I don't think it matters. I think you just need to know that this just keeps happening to FBI agents. Chet Desmond disappears.
Everybody who looks into this gets stuck halfway or destroyed.
Yep.
We get here. Dale goes to the trailer park and talks with Carl Rod, and he tells Carl or he asks Carl where's the deputy's trailer, and he starts to walk the opposite direction, and he goes, Carl says, "Where the hell are you going? Damn, these people are confusing."
Yep.
And I'm like, that's the show. That's it.
But I also like that he asked that, and then Dale goes, "I'm going over here."
Right.
And I'm like, that's Dale Cooper. Like he just does things like that.
He'll answer you.
Can I say one other thing real quick? Because
Yeah.
I wrote this down. This actually was discussed in the Blank Check episode about this movie. They had Arkasha Stevenson on, who is the director of The First Omen.
Yeah.
And she said when she was researching for her movie, The First Omen, about quote unquote the rules of hell.
Yes.
She came up with what her theory is about the Black Lodge and the Red Room to an extent. And I think this makes all the sense in the world, which is, she said in her research, she found that, and again, it's research with quotation marks around it, but evil will take things that are dear to you and make them formless and meaningless. And that's why things that happen in those rooms are unexplainable. The backward speech, the weird Native American mouth noises that the arm does.
Yeah.
The reversing of the jumping man and everything, like the widescreen corn. It's all supposed to be disorienting and absurd to make it not as pure anymore.
Right.
And also because we live inside a dream.
It's a dream.
It's a dream.
I love that.
Right?
I also love this shot of Dale Cooper looking through the windshield that says, "Let's rock."
Mm-hmm.
It's maybe one of the top 5 images from all of Twin Peaks. It's so good.
It's great. Let's Rock is also in the TV show.
It's the first thing the man from the other place says.
Right.
From another place says. Yeah.
Let's get this whole thing going, basically.
Yes.
Okay, so that's what I was wondering because I didn't know. This is the FBI agent's car
Yeah.
that went missing.
Chet Desmond, yeah.
I just wasn't sure if the Let's Rock thing was supposed to be a clue because it looks like this vehicle's been sitting here for quite some time.
For a long time, right?
Yeah.
I love that too.
So I wasn't sure what timeline we're in right now. How far are we? I know we have a trailer that's missing.
Yeah.
Right.
So I had no idea what was going on here.
Yeah, I think it's the man from another place that wrote this on the windshield, but it could very well be anybody else, pretty much.
Now, wait, now who the fuck is a man from another place?
That's the arm, the little
guy.
person.
Yeah.
The arm. Okay.
That's his other name.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
And I love this moment where Cooper basically says, I know this isn't over yet. You know, we'll figure this out as the song goes, who knows where or when. And then smash cut to the Twin Peaks sign and the theme music. And it is just like, I get chills every time it happens.
Yes. It's 34 minutes before we actually get to the meat of this movie, which is Twin Peaks, Laura Palmer. We get the theme song. And it's a nice little bridge between Dale Cooper already being involved in this case a year before it actually happens. And like just the symmetry of all that is beautiful. But yeah, we get, 7 days before Laura Palmer is killed, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So we get introduced to her finally, Cheryl Lee, who just looks phenomenal. Literally, David Lynch, JT, said when he cast Laura Palmer, I didn't expect her to be anything other than a pretty face in plastic.
Right.
And that's why he hired her. And little did he know he was going to get one of the best performances of all time out of this model, basically.
Oh, God, yeah.
She was hired. She was a local hire because she didn't need to have any lines. And then he got to know her while they were shooting B-roll for the show and was just like, was so taken with her that he created another character for her to play. He started adding the dream sequences into the show and then built an entire film around her.
Yep. And then we also get introduced to Donna, this time played by Maura Kelly, who is the only character recast from the TV show. It's Laura Flynn Boyle in the show. They're definitely playing the character differently.
I prefer Moira Kelly as Donna.
Okay. That's what I was going to ask, because I think I prefer...
It's a hot take.
I was going to say, I think I prefer Laura Flynn Boyle, but I don't mind this version because this version of Donna is much more doe-eyed and naive, which you kind of need for this movie.
And empathetic.
Yes.
I mean, you see this as someone, Donna in the show feels like someone who is always challenging this idea that she's
in a soap opera.
Right. and she's challenging this concept of her own innocence.
Yes.
And in this movie, you feel that Donna, the things that she does are all done from a place of protection and love for Laura.
Yeah.
It ties in really wonderfully with that monologue she has in season 2 where she describes hooking up with these college boys because she was trying to keep an eye on Laura and always trying to keep pace with her.
Yep.
And it's just you get the feeling that Laura dies almost as much for Donna as she does for her own escape. Like she can't drag Donna down with her. It's why she leaves James behind.
It's such a complex character that I don't feel like people give enough credit to whenever they're just watching this as a typical narrative movie.
Right.
So what I will say, go ahead, JT.
Oh no, go ahead before we move to this next scene.
Sure. I was just going to kind of get you caught up to like the relationships here and everything, because I know it can be a little confusing. Laura, as we talked about, was the homecoming queen. She's dating Bobby, who is like is he the quarterback of the football team, or is he just on the football team?
It's always so funny when I remember that he's a football player because it barely matters.
Because they never show.
Yeah.
That's his friend Mike in the convertible with him,
who ends up dating an amnesiac 40-year-old woman with superpowers
and an eye patch. Don't forget about the eye patch. That's so fucking. That's the craziest plot thread.
Well, see, so that's why I paused it here, because we never see Mike again.
No,
if I'm not mistaken.
No, Donna mentions him later, but that's about it.
Yeah, well, he's also brought up again in the woods.
Yeah, she says you killed Mike.
Yeah, I was like, no,
I know.
No, he didn't.
I know. I think she just thinks they kind of look alike.
It's the one weak spot of this movie where I feel like there's a lot of scenes that feel more like vignettes than scenes.
Yeah.
Like we start scenes in the middle of a conversation.
Yeah.
We have that moment where James, who Laura is cheating on Bobby with.
Yeah.
And James, who is in love with James and Donna are in love with each other, but haven't really admitted it to themselves yet.
It's a soap opera.
Right. But we start that scene in the middle of a conversation with him just saying like, it does matter. And it was like, we don't know what he's responding to really.
Yeah. So basically the way the relationships work is, Laura's dating Bobby, who's on the football team, but that they're public, but she's also using him for drugs.
Right.
She's secretly dating James because James is like actually like the sweet, nice guy, but she also kind of pities him for that same reason.
Right.
Donna and James kind of have a will they, won't they in the movie. In the show, it's much more apparent. And yeah, Mike is just kind of there. He's just Bobby's friend, really. There's not really much to Bobby. I mean, to Mike.
And you see how Laura is trying to have it all, right? Like she wants the nice guy, but she also needs the bad boy to feed her habits. And there's a switch that you see when Laura is really upset with Bobby, but she knows she has him wrapped around her finger.
Yep.
Whenever we would hear Laura's voice in the TV series, it was a kind of disconcerting thing because she used this sort of baby voice.
Yep.
Like we hear some of the recordings that she did with her therapist in the TV show, and she's got this sort of like, hey, doc, like very seductive, but also like what a teenager would think sounds sexy. It's a very strange thing that sort of infantilizes her. And this movie makes it explicit that that was her getting what I want voice.
Yeah.
Like it was a calculation she made, which I think is such a smart move.
She became a femme fatale.
Right.
Yeah. And yeah, so she's in the scene with James in the bathroom, and only David Lynch could make an actor say the phrase
gobble, gobble, and sell it.
Oh my God.
And with tears in her eyes.
Christy and I lost our fucking minds.
This is more the tone of the show, JT, where it's very melodramatic.
Yes.
But like, it's also kind of goofy.
I mean, again, I have no idea if there's any significance to the turkey thing. But
not really.
Okay, because from the outs, like us not watching anything except for this, the gobble 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 shit cracked us up.
Fair enough.
It's funny. I think it's even kind of supposed to be funny. I think that's intentional.
Because he said like he's like turkeys are dumb or something like that, and then she's crying, and then
she says gobble gobble.
No, but then I was all. It showed her crying, and I was all like, turkeys aren't dumb. And then she's like, gobble, gobble, gobble. We just lost it.
And to me, that feels like her trying to diffuse the situation.
Well, I was going to ask, who has a better gobble, her or Jennifer Lopez?
This is the better version of the Geely scene, if that's what you're asking.
That's what I'm asking.
So we get this scene with Bobby, who is like accusing her of stepping out on him. And she basically is just like, no, you're my guy. I love you. And he's like, yeah, babe, I love you too. And this leads to maybe my favorite shot in the movie, which is Bobby smiling and stomping backwards and smoking. And
with this crazy song playing.
So the song playing here was written and performed by Angelo Badalamenti. It's called A Real Indication. And the story goes that when he played, Lynch was like, I want kind of a rap song, something that sounds goofy and off kilter. And when Angelo Badalamenti played this for him in the studio, Lynch describes laughing and then feeling an explosion inside of him. He laughed so hard that he gave himself a hernia that he dealt with for the rest of the filming process. Like,
Jesus.
It's one of my favorite behind the scenes stories.
Did you notice this kid that's in the background, though, while Bobby's walking backwards, who just seems to be like stumbling in, like he just escaped the Black Lodge? Like,
yes.
What's going on with that guy?
I don't know. He's right up there with the guy who break dances in the first episode.
Yep. And then we get the scene with Laura and Donna where they're.
I love this scene.
I think this scene embodies the entire movie.
Yes.
And why what happens to Laura happens.
Donna tells Laura, James is the one. He loves you with an everlasting love.
Mm-hmm.
And Laura can see what's up. She gets that her best friend is in love with her boyfriend.
Yeah.
And Laura asks her, do you think that if you were falling in space, you'd slow down after a while or go faster and faster? And that is the thesis of the movie.
Yep. I think it's also that. And I think it's also that Donna is sitting here fawning over boys and, saying, oh, Bobby's a goon and all this stuff. So surface level stuff. But
yes.
Laura is clearly disassociating.
Yes.
Like to the point of like derealization.
Yeah.
And you can see her slipping into something dark.
Yeah.
And Donna is a representation to me of the entire town just ignoring it.
Yeah, being so wrapped up in it that they could, or not even, what's happening to Laura is so terrible that these people can't reckon with it. There's an incredible scene in the TV series at Laura Palmer's funeral when Bobby stands up and says, you're all a bunch of hypocrites. We killed Laura Palmer.
Yep.
Like she was in trouble and none of us did a damn thing about it.
Yep.
And this movie shows us that he wasn't just acting out. That was true.
Yes.
And I got to say, this is a very kind of vulnerable moment here, but the first time I watched this movie, I was actively struggling with suicidal ideation and I was in a very, very bad place in my mental health and personal life. And that's one of the reasons why this sequence in this movie just feel so true to me, as over the top and as surrealistic as many of the elements of this movie are. there is a truth to the performance and the enormity of how it feels. I mean, it feels like a cosmic imbalance when you're in pain and you're struggling and you feel like, I'm being so loud about this. How the hell aren't people noticing? And Laura feels like, as she says here, the angels won't help you. It's such an isolating feeling.
Yeah.
And I think this movie does that. It pulls that off in a very real way.
Absolutely. And then, Laura goes home and she starts to write in her journals, her diary, which comes up huge in the show, even all the way into the return.
Yeah.
And she notices a page is missing. And so she goes to her friend's house, Harry.
Yeah.
Who is played by Lenny Von Dohlen. I think he's great in this.
Oh, he's incredible. Yeah.
Okay, wait.
Yeah,
Nope,
yep.
You've gone too far.
Okay.
Who the fuck is this guy?
This is who we're talking about. This is Lenny Von Dohlen playing as Harold.
Well, I know that, but like, what's his whole thing? Because he almost seems like a therapist of some kind.
Kind of. So in the show, he's the guy that is afraid of leaving his house, which is why he never chases after Laura here.
She was visiting him as part of the Meals on Wheels program and bringing him food, and they became friends because he was like, well, tell me about the outside world.
Yeah.
Basically.
That's basically what it is. But he's maybe the only one that truly sees Laura and wants to help her but can't.
Right.
He comes up in the second season of the show, JT, kind of a minor role, but not really. But this is where Cheryl Lee says maybe the most haunting line of the movie to me, which is, it's Bob. He's been having me since I was 12.
Yeah. Bob is real.
Yeah.
Right. So like, but she has told him, it seems like she's talked to him about Bob before.
Yeah.
And that's where it's, because at this point of watching this, I have no idea who the fuck Bob is.
Sure.
So I was like, what the fuck is this?
Sure.
I was like, I don't understand. And he seems to be like, his reaction is, oh my God, no, it can't. Bob, really? But like, he knows who Bob is.
Yeah.
And I was like, what is this?
And he sees she's slipping further into the other side because we see a flash of her dark self here that is like absolutely haunting.
Yeah.
But so he's aware of everything.
I don't think it's that. I think he just believes her and wants to understand, but because it is such a metaphysical thing, all he can go off of is what he tells her. So when he says like, it's Bob, he's coming for me, he won't rest till I'm dead or whatever, he doesn't know how to help her.
Right.
All he can do is just listen. And that's why, like, even when she leaves, he's like, well, my fear of going outside, I can't go help her.
Right.
This is why I'm saying I think he's the only one that actually sees her and what she's going through and wants to help but can't.
And, you know, the show will establish that he loved her and knew that, you know, he was too old for her and it was a very difficult. Harold Smith is such an interesting character because on the surface, he's a real incel.
Yeah.
But then there's also like this depth of compassion inside of him. And he's so full of contradictions and he's such a tragic figure in the show while also being like kind of a creep.
Yeah. And this is where we get the infamous Fire Walk With Me line, which is the last line, JT, of a poem that reoccurs throughout the TV show. And it's essentially just like kind of a mantra that the people in the Black Lodge have. It doesn't really have any specific meaning. You see the phrase pop up in like graffiti and stuff throughout the TV show, but the fact that Laura knows it, you know, all the more solidifies that she is fully aware of what is going to happen to her.
Yes.
And I think that's part of it too, is that she's kind of resigned to her fate throughout this movie. She's like, I know what's coming.
She's spiraling. She knows that she's going to die.
Yeah.
And she welcomes it.
Yeah. She goes home. And has the ceiling fan ever been more scary than in this movie? Because she gets entranced by it and she hears Bob say, I want to taste through your mouth.
Right.
Which is one of the most unsettling things I've ever heard.
Horrifying.
But also, I don't understand what the fuck that.
He wants to possess her.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's literal.
Right.
I want to taste through your mouth.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so the ceiling fan, is that any other significance in the show or is that just in this movie?
It's a moment. It's a visual that we come back to whenever something bad happens in the Palmer house. And I think it is just meant to be like, the simple things that you stare at when you're trying to leave your body, basically. Like
Right.
she kind of fixates on it. There's a really incredible scene in The Missing Pieces where we just hold on her face, and every time the fan goes by, the light intensifies, and she slowly changes from this sort of like zoned out look into the scariest, most evil grin you've ever seen in your life.
Yeah.
It's one of the most haunting pieces of acting I've ever seen.
But also, seems a little excessive to put a ceiling fan in a hallway. Like,
I don't know, man. I have high blood pressure. I'm in my late 30s. I get tired and hot walking up the stairs.
Sure. Yeah, there's a couple of instances, JT, where you see that shot of the ceiling fan from like the bottom of the stairs.
Right.
It's a static image, and it's just supposed to invoke like there's dark shit happening up there.
Well, in the first episode, when Sarah Palmer realizes that Laura is dead, she also runs down the stairs screaming.
Yeah.
And so that's a recurring image as well.
Yeah.
So is it supposed to invoke to the viewer that like something bad is about to happen or has just happened?
Yeah.
It's happening, I think.
Or it's happening. Yeah.
It's everlasting. Yeah.
It is happening again.
Yeah.
And so that's why when she looks up, it seemed like she's like, oh shit, here we go again.
Right.
Again, I think it's just her disassociating so hard that, she gets locked in the trance of seeing the ceiling fan blade spin around,
Yeah.
Right. So next, real quick.
Yeah.
The Black Lodge and the Red Room again.
I love that that we're doing this.
Yeah.
Go on.
But we're not going to talk about Judy.
We're not going to talk about Judy.
You see the arm.
Uh-huh.
You see him and the guy that he was attached to.
Mike. Yep.
Yeah, you see them two in the White Room more so, and Cooper more so than you do like the old lady and the kid.
Yeah, they're in the Black Lodge, and Cooper and them are in the Red Room, also known as the waiting room.
Right. But you see the arm kind of go in between the two.
Yeah.
Okay. And you see, but Mike, you only see in the waiting room.
Right.
And but you only see Bob in the waiting room at the end.
Yes.
And so can any of these little entities or whatever just go through willy-nilly, or is it?
I think Bob and the arm, because they have that evil presence in them, can traverse between. Whereas I think Mike is kind of stuck in the wait, because he's in the waiting room a lot in The Return.
Yeah.
Because he's just genuinely, I wouldn't say good, because
he's turned to good.
He's turned to good.
Yeah.
He's removed the evil like it was a cancer,
Which
but
is
I
the
think
arm,
it's also
yeah.
diminished his power.
Yes.
Yeah.
But I guess because the arm was once attached to Mike, he can just kind of go wherever.
And he's the evil part. Yeah, he can kind of go where. Because the arm appears in the waiting room the very first time you're in the waiting room. And that's when he says, like in the third episode of the TV show is the first time you see the waiting room. And it's the arm saying, let's rock. And then he just starts dancing.
Right.
So my only complaint about this movie, well, before we get there, I guess we have this scene where, Dale is trying to talk to Albert about like, I know that this case isn't over with Teresa Banks and all that.
Yeah.
There's a girl. And then Albert's like, okay, well, let's narrow it down. And he basically narrows it down to it's a blonde girl in high school. And he goes, well, congratulations, Cooper. You just named like half of America or something like that.
Yeah. And it is an unnecessary scene, but it's great to have these two together. And I think that's why it was left in.
Well, I like Albert, especially when he gets to The Return.
Albert's one of my favorites.
Yeah. He's such a no-nonsense guy. But then he also accepts that Cooper is clearly in touch with something. And I think that's what this is supposed to remind you of like, this is all inevitable. Like Cooper going to Twin Peaks is inevitable.
It's some of my favorite stuff in the show. Like when he's talking with Albert about the case, they're going over the evidence, and Albert is like, okay, well, here's what we know. And he goes through like a long autopsy report. He's like, we found these minerals. They're from this place.
Yep.
We found, fibers under the fingernails, blah, 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 blah. And then he goes, Cooper says, and what about the other stuff? And he goes, right, the guy from your dream. We had someone draw him. Like, here's what he looks like.
That's what the relationship is like. Absolutely.
Yeah.
But yeah, we get Laura and Shelley performing Meals on Wheels. And this is my only complaint about this movie. Not enough Shelley Johnson in it.
Yeah.
Not enough Shelley. David Lynch, JT, was the king of putting the most beautiful women in Twin Peaks. And Machen Amick, who plays Shelley Johnson right here, is maybe my favorite. And it's so funny because I think it was also she was also David Lynch's favorite. Because in season 2, JT, there's a scene where Gordon Cole comes to Twin Peaks he sees Shelley Johnson for the first time and goes, holy shit, like that is the most beautiful woman I've ever seen.
He falls in love with her at first sight, and whenever she talks, he's like, I can hear you perfectly. It's my favorite scene in the whole show.
She's the only one he can hear where she doesn't have to yell and he doesn't have to turn up his ear device. He's like, he talks in a normal voice when he talks to her. And it's also funny because in the show, she's dating Bobby at that point.
Right.
And Bobby comes into the diner after Gordon Cole has convinced her to kiss him. And Bobby's like, Shelley, what are you doing? And Gordon's like, oh, she's about to do it again. Watch this.
Yeah. What he says, what? Because he goes, what is happening? Is what you are looking at right now is a 3/4 front view of two adults sharing a tender moment. It's my favorite line in the show. There's also the moment where she says, after he's talked to her and he's fallen in love with her, he says, you make me want to write a poem.
Yep.
Like it's so funny. And then she says, would you like some pie? And he says, massive quantities and a glass of water, honey. My socks are on fire.
He basically writes it so his character falls in love with maybe the most beautiful woman in the show and then has him kiss her. It's just so fun.
And it's carried into the return too, where like every once in a while Gordon will just be seen with a beautiful woman and like Albert just rolls his eyes.
He literally does that with Monica Bellucci as Monica Bellucci.
JT, maybe the funniest moment in TV history is Gordon Cole staring at Albert very seriously and then saying, I had one of my Monica Bellucci dreams last night. And then it cuts to him in a cafe with Monica Bellucci and he's like, she helped me solve the case. Like, it's so funny.
And it's literally Monica Bellucci as herself. It's so fucking funny.
It's so good. One of the great characters of television.
So Laura sees Mrs. Chalfont and her grandson.
Yeah.
And she says, I can't do the Meals on Wheels today. And they give her a painting of the doorway to her bedroom.
Right.
And she runs back home because I think they say something about like he's taking your diary or something like that. Mrs. Chalfont says something like that.
Yeah.
And she goes home. And this is kind of where the impetus of the whole rest of the movie is going to go.
Right.
But she runs upstairs and she sees Bob because she hides her diary behind her dresser. She sees Bob coming out from behind her dresser with the most evil fucking guttural noise coming from his mouth.
Right.
And so she runs downstairs, runs outside, hides in like a bush next to her house. And it's made so much more terrifying that she saw Bob for the first real time, I think.
Yeah.
It's so much more scary that she then sees her own dad exiting the house.
And her reaction of, no, not him. Like, she looks like she's going to start throwing up. Like,
it's a gut punch, man.
Yeah. It's visceral. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's an incredible performance.
So has acts of violence already happened to her?
Yeah.
Through Bob, through her dad?
Well, she talks about in her diary, like we don't ever see it in the show really, but she talks about like, yeah, these things kept happening and I just equated
He's been coming to her at night.
I equated it to Bob, not to my dad.
Well, and I think in the diary she says something like, I can never see his face.
Yeah.
And it's played as whether something supernatural is happening or if she's truly suppressing it. Like she's trying to not think about it.
Yeah. And that's why when she sees her dad come out of the house for this first time, she puts two and two together. She's like, oh, it's my dad who Bob is presenting in this moment. And
there's a moment like when she goes back inside that evening and we have the really upsetting, you know, you got to wash your hands, this whole bit. You know, I keep wondering, there's moments where I'm like, is this what he actually was behaving like? Or is this Laura's view of him now as this barely contained monster? Because we see Leland sort of rocking back and forth and smiling.
He's got a whistle and a song in his step.
And then a moment of like recognition and he bursts into tears. And it's
that's the thing. I just never knew it. So I, again, looking at it surface level without looking into it, it's like even if this dude is possessed or something like that, it's that at moments Bob's in control and that's when all these horrible things are happening.
Right.
And then in moments it's Leland and that's when we see Leland have the realization of what happened.
Right.
But he can't really talk about it to anybody.
Yeah.
Well, because there's a moment in the show when after the murder has been solved and all of this stuff where presumably Bob in Leland's body says, I'm about to pull the ripcord and just watch what happens to Leland when I'm gone. Like as though Leland will suddenly become filled with the knowledge of everything he's done. And that is how it is played in the show. In the movie, there is an implication that Leland already had these dark sexual proclivities, and he was picking up escorts, and specifically escorts that looked like his daughter.
That's the thing that like I was like, okay, so in the movie it's played out to where like, yeah, he's a fucking weirdo.
Yeah.
That he's sleeping with prostitutes that look like his daughter. And again, I'm not saying it like when I say that's all he's guilty of. That's
right.
not, I mean that but in the movie it's played off like, all right, so he's a weirdo that has this weird thing with his daughter, but as far as the violence and abusive towards his actual daughter, it never really hit.
My read is that he is already a monster, a self-hating monster, and that is what opens him up to be corrupted by Bob. I mean, Bob seemingly encountered him when he was young.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's all kind of a metaphor for the cycle of abuse and violence, right?
Yeah.
Like, so, it's purposefully ambiguous, but in a way that sometimes frustrates me.
Yeah.
I think it's twofold. I think number one, you're supposed to question during the movie, is this fully Leland? Is it fully Bob? Or is it a mixture of the two in this moment?
Right.
When he's being mean to her at the dinner table, is that all Leland or is that all Bob? Is it partially Leland? I think that's what you're supposed to ask yourself.
Right.
And see, and it's just, again, going like, then when we go to the end, where like, I guess like you would think where at this point in her life that she has hit the absolute rock bottom.
Right.
Again, when Leland had that moment of realization that what he did, and he's crying and he goes and apologizes, does all this stuff. You kind of get a flashback with Leland hooking up with the prostitute and all this stuff. And then towards the end, when she's in that cabin, he comes in and quote unquote, very loosely saves her from that situation. I was all like, oh, okay. Well, that's nice.
Yeah.
And then obviously that's not what happens, but I'm just like, wait, why though?
Oh, we'll talk about that when we get there for sure.
But that's the thing. I was never sure on as to what is it just he's not doing this stuff on purpose and it's just Bob.
Well, we'll talk about it for sure. And I'll talk about Leland's final scene in the TV show at that point too.
Right.
The other thing I wanted to mention though real quick is that when they were filming the TV show, I think it's important to remember that Ray Wise didn't know he was playing Laura Palmer's killer.
Right.
David Lynch didn't tell him that until the TV show got to that point where they announced it. And then, of course, by this point, doing the movie, he knows. He said otherwise he would have played his character completely different. But I think this movie kind of solidifies that idea that I said of like, I think you're supposed to question how much of it is Leland, how much of it is Bob.
Right.
But when Laura sees that it's Leland coming out of the house, she runs over to Donna's house and, screams at her, "Are you my best friend?" I think, again, going back to my whole idea of what this movie is, I think that's Donna responding in that moment as if Laura is crying because like maybe Bobby broke up with her or something like that. Like a typical high school, like I need a shoulder to cry on. Not I just saw my father who I think is this vessel for this cosmic evil entity that has been abusing me for years. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think Donna sees it as like a skin deep thing of like, oh, maybe James said something to her that upset her or something, I don't think she sees the full context. And then, this is the dinner scene where he sees the half of the heart-shaped necklace she's got on. He says, "Oh, did your lover give you that?" And then, "Oh, we're not going to eat until Laura washes her hands."
Yeah.
Sarah Palmer, I think, is the only character throughout all of Twin Peaks that I feel equally as bad for as I do for Laura. Because JT, she goes through it in the TV show and in The Return.
Yeah.
This woman never comes above water. It's so upsetting.
Yeah.
But I think she understands just how Laura feels in this moment. And then, I don't know if Laura truly has dirt under her fingernails or if that's just supposed to be him being like this perfectionist and like it's never going to be good enough for him.
Or him just trying to make her feel degraded.
Yeah, I think there's that too.
Like it's a power trip.
It also could be kind of foreshadowing to what happens to the other half of her necklace.
Sure.
Because as we see in the TV show in the pilot, she gives the other half of the necklace to James, and then James and Donna bury it in the dirt in the woods.
That's true.
So maybe that's supposed to be part of it too. But
well, it also could be a reference to the letter hidden under her fingernail after she's dead.
Yes. But here's the thing that makes this whole thing interesting to me about if it's Leland, if it's Bob, because then we have Leland sitting in his bedroom at night and he just starts breaking down crying.
Right.
And telling Laura that he loves her. It's fucking heartbreaking. And you can tell through Shirley's performance that Laura doesn't see her dad like that often.
Right.
Like, you could see Leland break away for a moment.
She doesn't know what to make of it. Yeah.
Dude, but this acting right here, just
It's
from
phenomenal.
When he goes from the smile to the heartbroken face, yeah, it's incredible.
he goes for this scowling to the realization,
Yeah.
and then to the heartbreak. Like, everything is acted on his face right there, and it is tragic.
Yeah.
I think that's him having, it's like if you had the emotional memories of something bad you did, but not the actual physical memories of what you did. Like,
Right.
I know I did something bad, but I don't know what it is.
Right.
And I'm just feeling that way. It's kind of like, if we want to talk about it, kind of how Severance plays into their characters too. Of like, the outies did something and then the innies feel it. You know what I mean?
Right.
But he also, again, I noticed that he grabs the hands that he just made her wash, and he looked at her hands, and as he apologized, I thought that was a cool touch.
Great touch. And then, yeah, this is where Laura has her dream and she sees Dale and the arm in the waiting room.
And oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that she sees them in the waiting room and we have Dale telling her not to take the ring. And then, surprise, Heather Graham. What did you make of Heather Graham appearing in Laura's bed covered in blood, JT? Did you even recognize that was her?
I didn't even recognize that was her.
Yeah.
I swear, I was like, okay, whenever this is again just chalked up to one of those things like, well, that'll never come up again. I have no idea what the fuck it was.
So this actually connects the end of the second season of the TV show to now, which is clearly before the TV show takes place.
That's why I think Cooper in the dream is from the end of the show as well.
That makes sense.
I think they're trying to warn Laura, but everything's happening out of order.
Yeah,
Yes.
because also this double take shot of the exact same like framing angle, and then she starts screaming when there's no one there.
Yes.
Also notice that she has to lift her arm because it's gone numb.
Yes.
Much like Teresa Banks's did when she died.
Yes. So real quick, JT, just so you know, Heather Graham plays a character named Annie that appears in maybe like the last, I don't know, like 6 episodes of the show.
Yeah.
It's just a character that Cooper kind of falls in love with, and she gets...
She's so boring.
She is, but she gets caught up in some shit at the end of that show that I don't want to spoil, but...
Yeah.
It's never really left a definitive answer of whether or not her character is dead, in a coma, if she's in the waiting room. It's never really answered.
Unless you read the final dossier or the missing pieces shows. There's a deleted scene from this movie where towards the end of the film, she's in the hospital after the events of season 2 and looks up and tells the nurse that's standing over her exactly what she just said to Laura. I'm in the lodge with the good Dale, you know.
Yeah.
I've been in the lodge with Cooper and Laura, and then she is catatonic again.
Yeah. So that you don't really have to know much except that kind of ties into the TV show, and that's pretty much it.
Yeah.
Then we get cut to one of the most insane cuts of the movie, which is we get introduced to Leo for the first time. Leo Johnson.
Fucking Leo.
I want to say this as nicely as I can.
The worst performance in the television series.
Leo is maybe the worst character in all of Twin Peaks.
Yeah.
And I don't just mean because the character's a piece of shit. I think Eric DeRay is not a good actor.
And it must be said, his mother is the casting director for Twin Peaks.
Yep. I think he would maybe be an okay stage actor. But yeah, in the show, JT, he is just a fucking asshole. He's a dickhead. He gets left in the series in maybe the funniest way ever, where there's like a spider trap above his head, and if he moves, a bunch of spiders will fall out of it. That's it. They never come back to it.
He's got a rope in his teeth and he can't even call for help. It's great. Yeah, it's a weird cut, and also just not really. I guess it's necessary because we need to get introduced to Leo before they go to the cabin at the end of the movie. But that's about it.
And we need to understand that Leo and Bobby and Jacques all have this cocaine trade going on.
Yeah.
Jacques, who runs he's the bartender at the Bang Bang Bar, also known as the Roadhouse.
Ashley has argued it should be called the Bar Bang Bang.
The Bar Bang Bang,
because
absolutely.
of the neon sign.
Yeah. So JT, in the show, Jacques is a Canadian. There's a whole thing between like there's a Canadian
drug trade and human trafficking trade.
Yeah, with a brothel that's up there in Canada, because this place, Twin Peaks, is in Washington, so they're like right there on the border.
Right.
And we get introduced to the only time in the movie, because Laura decides she's going to go to the bar. Donna shows up and says, "I want to go with," and she goes, "Fine," and she comes with her. We get introduced to the most interesting character in all of Twin Peaks, Nathan. I think you'll agree with me. the log lady, Catherine.
So look, the entire time we were watching this, Chrissy was just like, I just really hope the log lady's in this movie.
Oh, yay.
And then when she showed up, she was just all like, fuck yes, the log lady.
Yeah.
Again, have no fucking idea.
So the log lady is introduced with one of the funniest lines of dialogue of all time, where they're sitting at a town hall meeting. Dale Cooper is asking Sheriff Truman like about different people that are walking in. And then at one point he goes, who's the lady with the log? And Truman just goes, we call her the log lady.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
All you need to know, JT, is she's kind of a clairvoyant. That's really it.
Yeah. She gets messages from her log.
From her log, yeah.
Which may be possessed by her dead husband.
Maybe.
Possibly.
Maybe.
It's implied.
I will say, watching this movie for the second time now, having seen all of Twin Peaks, seeing the log lady and Laura Palmer in a scene together was like watching De Niro and Pacino in Heat. I was like, oh my God.
No, you're not wrong.
These two are on screen at the same time.
You're not wrong. She has her scenes in
You're about to say exactly what I'm going to say.
Her scenes in The Return are there's no words for how impactful they are.
Soul crushing.
Yeah.
So JT, just real briefly, in The Return, she appears, but only like she's sitting in a chair talking over the phone. She's clearly going through like cancer.
Yeah.
She's got like the oxygen hose and everything. And what you'll find out if you do any research is that was the actress actually going through those real things, knowing she was dying.
Yeah.
And in fact, one of the first words she says in The Return, because she's on the phone talking to Hawk, who again is the Native American guy that works for the sheriff's department. She's first words, I think, are, I'm dying, Hawk.
I'm dying, Hawk.
And then at the very end of the show, she keeps giving like these ominous warnings, like it's happening or whatever. At the very end of of her scenes in the show, she says to Hawk, good night, Hawk. He says good night to her, hangs up, and then says goodbye. And the actress actually died before the show even finished filming. So
she died a week after filming her scenes,
Yes.
from what I understand.
Yeah, so that was their way of saying goodbye to her.
And it was her way of saying goodbye.
Yeah.
It's one of the it's so heavy to
it's
like
beautiful though.
It's kind of an impossible thing
Yeah.
that I can't believe is on film.
She's the best character, like just straight up. She's great.
I do love her. And she tells us that it's not just you're in trouble, all goodness is in jeopardy. Like
Yeah.
Laura's death is a cosmic problem.
Which comes up in The Return. They explain a little bit more without using words.
All right, real quick.
Yeah.
Before we get too far into it, when Bobby called Jacques,
Yeah.
I know they have like a big score coming up and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Laura's going to this bar not to like just because she's just being a degenerate, right? It has nothing to do.
But she's going to work.
Yeah.
Okay.
She's a call girl.
Yeah.
Got you.
Jacques is her pimp.
Okay, because I just wasn't sure. Because I was like, well, with it being back to back with the scene where Bobby's on the phone with Jacques,
Mhm.
it made it seem like either Bobby sent her to go work.
I don't think Bobby ever knows that she is a...
Bobby doesn't know until after she's dead.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that okay, because then we're at the bar with Jacques, and
Yeah.
I was okay.
No, Jacques just mixed up in a lot of bad stuff.
Right.
He's a real bad guy. Him and his brother, which you get introduced into the show.
Oh my God, his brother. His brothers.
Yes, yes.
The Renault family, their roots run deep.
They're terrible.
Ashley's favorite thing about Twin Peaks
Julie Cruz?
is when they cut to anytime Julie Cruz is performing at this bar, because you see like cowboys and bikers watching this like soft shoegaze music.
This song is mesmerizing,
It
and
is.
I love how hard it hits Laura. Like
Yeah.
crying at a bar is tough work.
This is the spiritual successor to Donna crying in the classroom in the first episode.
Yes, yes.
And the lyrics are, I mean, Lynch wrote these lyrics for Julie Cruz's songs on this and then her first album. But the lyrics, when all the world seems right, how can love die?
Yeah.
Gets me right in the stomach. I'm wired so strangely, but it obliterates me.
JT, would you also believe that this is the same bar that only a few years later, Nine Inch Nails will perform at, the Chromatics? The Return ends almost every episode by cutting to the bar and just some of the biggest bands ever just performing at the bar, and there's like almost no other context. It's just like
Eddie Vedder performing under his real name.
it's insane.
One of the hardest laughs I ever got in The Return is when it cuts to the MC at the bar and he goes, "Ladies and gentlemen, the Roadhouse is pleased to present the 9 Inch Nails."
Yeah. and it's just it's clearly clearly just an excuse for David Lynch to be like, well, I like these bands. I want them to perform in my show. So we'll write a scene for it. But it has almost no connection to anything.
Right.
It's so funny. Man, when they bring James Hurley in to play the Just You and I song, it's my favorite thing in the world.
James was always cool. I don't know what you're talking about.
and Audrey dances to her own theme music. It's the best.
That shit's crazy. We can't even get into the Audrey of it all.
No, we're not going to talk about Audrey or Judy.
So yeah, Donna goes with Laura to this bar. Laura starts working. These two guys approach her, and Donna trying to keep up with Laura as she's working as a call girl is heartbreaking.
Yeah.
But then they decide, all right, well, we're going to cross the border into Canada. They don't go to One Eyed Jack's, right? They just go to some other bar.
It's another bar. It's not, there's a deleted scene of them driving over the border.
Right.
But in the way the movie is cut, it seems like this is the back room at the Roadhouse.
It does.
I didn't even know they were at another bar until you just said that.
Yeah, they go to another bar. Yeah.
Well, there's one line where someone says, "Welcome to Canada."
Yeah. Yeah, Jacques says it, I think, when they get there.
Yeah. So, I mean, Laura is daring these guys to treat her like a thing.
Yeah.
She says, "So you want to fuck the homecoming queen?" And they laugh.
Yeah.
And Laura is trying to show Donna, this is ugly.
Yeah.
There's a moment where Laura almost cries when Donna tries to go with her. And then she composes herself, takes a shot. And it's almost like they're playing chicken with each other, right? Like Donna's like, trying to convince her she doesn't want to do this by going along.
Yeah.
And Laura is trying to convince Donna to leave by showing her how ugly this world is.
Yeah. Yeah. This scene, this new bar, though, with this psychedelic funk song playing is so good.
The track is called The Pink Room.
God damn it.
There's another color.
Another fucking color. God damn.
And it's maybe my favorite piece of Angelo Badalamenti's music.
This shit is a nightmare, but it is so entrancing. Like this song is fucking great.
Yeah, and so there's a lot of part of this movie that I don't, or a lot of part of this scene that I don't get.
Yeah.
But the exchanging of beers like 30 times during the conversation.
Yes.
I did not understand.
They roofie him.
He doses it. Yeah.
Well, I know, but all of them.
Yeah.
No.
He wants to be a part of it too.
But the whole circle, no, like the girls too, I thought were all just like handing each other beers.
No, you're right.
Why would that? But that wasn't even a conversation. It's just like something they just started doing as if it's something they do all the time. You know what I mean?
Well, Laura's at rock bottom and Donna is experiencing that. So,
and Donna is trying to keep up, and Moira Kelly's so incredible in the scene of fixating on playing it cool, but she's also, you can tell she's looking at all the exits. She's trying to figure out a way out until she gets drugged.
Yeah.
Like her focusing on the sweater on the floor feels so real. That moment when you're like, uh-oh, I'm too messed up and I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
It's really exceptional.
Yeah. See this, like okay, then you can see Donna takes a sip and thinks that's, all right, that's it. Oh, you're handing me another. Okay, so
I think it's just supposed to be like what's mine is yours, but yours is mine kind of thing.
This copy that you have
doesn't have the subtitles burned in.
Doesn't have the subtitles in it. And from what I understand, the original theatrical release of the film in some markets did not have subtitles in this sequence.
Yeah.
Which I think is so strange.
And Laura saw her getting drugged, right?
Yeah.
If I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
And she let her do that? Yeah.
Well, so two things about that. Number one, I think the subtitles being burned in is fine.
Yeah.
I don't think you need to hear any dialogue that happens in the scene to understand it.
I think some of it is good. I mean, the bit where
I'm not saying I don't like it. I'm saying I don't think you need it necessarily.
I would say aside from when Jacques says, yeah, Teresa told me that she was blackmailing somebody and she wanted to know what your dad's looked like.
But like this is like exactly what a bar environment is like, which is a lot of movies don't get right, which is you have to yell over the music and then even then you're muffled, which I think David Lynch nails on that. But the atmosphere in this scene is incredible.
I thought that jacket was going to catch on fire.
The editing in this scene is so precise and yet it feels lackadaisical. Like it feels like we stay on shots a lot longer than we need to.
Oh my God. The sudden introduction of Ronette Pulaski gliding into the shot almost in the same way that she walks across the bridge.
Oh my God.
The first episode of Twin Peaks.
It's incredible. All the performances in this scene are great. I like that Laura just kind of gives herself over to this fucking bad dream.
Yeah.
And Donna is kind of just taking advantage of whatever it is she can grasp onto. It's fucking heavy. And as you mentioned, we get introduced to Ronette Pulaski for the first time. JT, as you see at the end of the movie, she quote unquote survives. One of the inciting incidents of the TV show is after they find Laura Palmer's body, Renette Pulaski, battered and beaten and torn, just stumbles across someone in the woods, basically, across this railroad track, and they rescue her. She's kind of sidelined through most of the TV show, surprisingly.
She's in a coma through a lot of the show.
Yeah. And then, these guys that are with Donna and Laura, I mean, say what you will, but Buck's a real eater. This man,
Jesus Christ.
This man
you catch when she snaps her fingers at him, it's also the same movement she makes in the first dream sequence from the TV show. She does that to Dale.
But this guy starts eating Laura out under the table, and I think even Renette as well, if I'm not mistaken.
They're just trying to it also is sad too, because you can tell they're trying to just dissociate and not think about anything that's around them. And what snaps Laura out is seeing that Donna is being taken advantage of.
She's topless and this guy is failing all over her in this bar. Yeah.
And she starts screaming and the subtitles abruptly are dropped. We don't really hear what Laura is screaming at Donna other than we just got to get out.
So I do know what she says.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, please.
She picks up the sweater and she yells at her, "Don't ever wear my clothes."
Yeah. Oh, that's why. So that's why Donna asks her that later. That's interesting.
Yeah. So I think what that is Laura is so inebriated that's the only way she can express, like, do not get involved with this shit that I'm involved with. And the way she gets that out is by saying, because Donna has like her sweater.
Stop trying to be me.
Yes.
Stop trying, which is a thing that Donna does through the show. She starts smoking after Laura dies. She starts wearing Laura's clothes and her sunglasses.
And then, they leave the bar. And then, the next day they're like, how did we get home?
Yeah.
I don't know. And then Leland comes to pick up Laura from Donna's place.
Yeah.
And this, again, JT, I could not imagine what you were like experiencing this, but they're being run down.
When the one-armed man drives up behind them.
By this one-armed man in a camper trying to run them off the road.
Yeah.
And they get to a corner. Nathan, this is just a question for you, because I think it is. The corner where they stop at the red light, is this the same corner where that kid gets fucking annihilated in the return?
I am 90% sure that it is.
I think it is too. Okay.
I think it's meant to be.
Okay. So this guy pulls up next to Leland and Laura and they're stuck in traffic and he just starts screaming at them.
And you can't quite hear a lot of it. The one thing that I can make out is it's your father.
And then it's something about the corn.
Bob wants his corn, basically. Yeah.
Oh, I missed that. Bob wants his corn and it's an incredible line.
So the way I saw this was that this guy is some kind of like cosmic force that is trying to tell Laura that it's your father.
He's in your father, yes.
No, I didn't get the whole he's in your father. It's just that it is your father.
It is your father, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Some kind of force is trying to make everything come to light about Leland's issues with the prostitutes and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But at this point in time, not necessarily the essay on his daughter.
Right. Yeah. Well, and the show will eventually tell us that Philip Gerard, the one-armed man, has to take some kind of drug to suppress this other spirit inside him. Yeah. So there's moments where Mike erupts forth. And that's, I think, what we're seeing here is that suddenly Mike has taken the wheel and is trying to stop Bob.
So Nathan, I know you got a hard out in like 40 minutes or so. I'm going to try and speed run through a lot of this stuff.
No, you're good.
We'll stop at the parts that we gotta really break down. But all we'll say is we get a flashback here where Leland was hooking up with Teresa Banks, who is the girl that was killed at the beginning of the movie. And he was clearly having kind of a violent relationship with her.
The moment when he covers her eyes so that he just sees the part that he thinks looks like Laura.
And says, "Who am I?"
Ugh.
Oof. And Teresa mentions that she's got these friends that she could bring with her the next time. And he goes to this hotel to do that. He sees through the door that it's Renette Pulaski and Laura.
Yeah.
He freaks out. He runs over to Teresa. And he pays her.
He's like, I chickened out. Here's your money.
I chickened out. Yeah. And he runs out of there. But it's also important to note that Teresa at this point has the ring.
Yes.
And so later on, back in the real world, Laura asked her dad, "Were you at home Friday? Did you come home for any reason?"
Yeah.
And he goes, "You know what? I did stop by for a minute.
I needed some aspirin."
That's the time she saw him exiting the house as Bob.
Yeah.
So I would say, one thing I did not understand, because it's kind of an almost nothing thing, I did not understand why Jacques tries to set up Bobby in the woods.
I feel like this was meant to maybe lead into more answers later on. But I mean, we do get this in the show. There's a sense that Leo was trying to cut Bobby out of the trade.
Right.
But it doesn't ever really come to much. This also ties up a loose end from the pilot where James says, Laura told me Bobby killed somebody. And then it's never mentioned again. So now we have to see this happen.
I love, first of all, the guy that he kills is the
shitty deputy
from Deer Meadows. Yeah. But it's also funny the fact that, Bobby kills a man and it's never brought up again in all the Twin Peaks.
Yes.
He gets like little handfuls of dirt and buries it over and goes, all right, let's get the fuck out of here.
He does. He throws like a couple of bits of dirt on it. And meanwhile, Laura's like, Bobby, I found a pine cone.
Yeah.
Like I love her performance in this scene. I love when she says, Bobby, watch. And she just does a little dance. And I'm like, that's just what me and Ashley are like at home.
I don't know why she says you killed Mike. I think she's just fucked up and disassociating.
Yeah, I think so too.
So just going back just a second,
Sure.
Leland killing Teresa.
Yeah.
What was the reasoning in that other than just
she was blackmailing him?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because he thought that she was going to tell Laura.
Oh, she finds out that Laura's his daughter.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so she was blackmailing him. And man, that sequence where we come full circle to the television being destroyed from the opening and then him beating her to death is haunting.
It's real fucked up. Yeah, I will say at this point, to anyone who hasn't seen this movie, to anyone that's just listening and doesn't know what happens from here on out, you've been warned.
Yes.
I don't say that lightly. Everything from what we're about to discuss to the end of the movie is horrific.
Right.
So you might want to bail out now if you can't handle anything that heavy. So she goes back home. She kind of tells James to fuck off.
Yeah.
And then Leland gives Sarah a glass of milk that is clearly drugged, and Sarah seems to just accept it.
Makes her finish it.
Yeah, he makes her finish it. She seems to understand exactly
what's happening.
I think one of the more interesting things here is that Sarah not only accepts being drugged, but then there's the shot of her waking up and seeing the horse in the bedroom.
Yeah.
My take on that is that Sarah would rather imagine something as nice and beautiful as a white horse than accept the reality of what she's living through. And I think that's all it is.
It's not the only time that we see the horse either.
Right.
Because it appears in season 2. I've always taken that as like a harbinger of death.
Or that.
The pale horse and all of that stuff. But I think that's an interesting read.
Well, I also did it because it's fleeting. Because it fades in, she sees it, and then it fades back out.
That's true.
So I was also wondering, like, if Laura possibly knows what's happening too, because who does cocaine right before bed?
That is a great point, actually. Yeah.
Disassociate more, yeah. And then, the scene that we're about to discuss where it's like lightning outside, but all the sound drops out except for Laura breathing. And then you see Bob sneak in through her window.
And it seems that Laura is trying to lure Bob.
Inviting him.
She puts on this slip, she starts rubbing her body, and then he comes in, and it's only when he's like on top of her that she grabs him and screams, "Who are you?"
Yeah, she needs to see his face.
Yeah, it's almost like, if this is happening anyway, let me try to set this trap and grab him.
Right.
But Frank Silva's performance, not saying a word, and just the way he sneaks into her bed it's
terrifying.
Horrific.
Yeah.
It's so fucking terrifying. Again, this scene's masterful. The fact that the sound pretty much just all drops out except for her breathing is so upsetting.
Yeah.
And then we just have to say it. I'm sorry to say it, but it's revealed that Bob, who is in the middle of Laura, Laura finally gets a good look at him, and it's Leland, clearly catatonic, but she screams bloody horror, and then we cut to black. Now, what I will say to kind of liven this up a little bit is JT texted me before he started watching the movie and said, "Hey, Chrissy's going to watch this."
No. Let me explain this part.
Okay, please go ahead.
I was all like, "Hey, last week you talked about heavy subject matter.
Yeah,
for this movie." I was like, "Is there any trigger warnings?" And he's like, "Yes." Without going into too much details, X, Y, and Z. And I was like, "Okay, could you provide me with a timestamp of like the worst offender?"
Sure.
And he does. Obviously, he goes onto the Plex account that we share and watches the scene, sends me the timestamps. I'm like, all right, cool.
Oh no. So when you,
Yep.
it started right there.
So no, when he pressed play, it was at the
Jesus.
It was her screaming over Black and then cutting to the bowl of cereal she's eating the next morning. So he's like, well, he then called me and said, hey, good job. Chrissy's crying over here.
Oh.
She really wasn't.
She wasn't, but it was just like, oh, I'm so fucking sorry.
Oh man.
But I will say what I decided to do from there was I was like, well, let me just go ahead and watch the scene myself.
Okay.
Before we like get down to this, like before we get all the way an hour and 46 minutes into the movie.
Yeah.
And it wasn't like, I mean, it's still a horrible act that's happening,
Yeah.
but like there's no nudity.
It does not feel exploitative or titillating at all.
No.
Yeah.
Well, here's what I was going to try to. My problem was, JT, I didn't want to say, oh, there is a scene in the movie.
Right.
You know, I didn't want to say it that way because, yes, that's what it's physically happening. But to me, you need that scene for the movie to make sense and to work.
Right.
Yeah.
It is one of the only scenes in a movie that
feels necessary.
that feels necessary to the story that's being told. So I didn't want to say that.
And the thematic elements. Yeah.
Well, no, well, I mean, that's the thing. Like, I was just trying to say, like, it's still a graphic crime.
Oh,
but
yeah.
It's not a graphic scene. Because, I mean, there's horrible scenes out there for this.
Yeah.
Right.
I also didn't want to say, well, it's also not technically like what you think is happening. It's this cosmic entity kind of
Right.
possessed. I didn't want to get into all that and just have you be confused. So
And due to the light flashes and stuff like that, I was concerned that I was like, well, did that happen in reality? That's
Sure.
the thing. Like, after watching that, my immediate was like, God, what is real and what is not happening at this point?
yeah.
Welcome to Twin Peaks, buddy.
Yeah. They have breakfast the next morning and Leland clearly doesn't seem to know or remember anything that specifically happened.
Yeah.
Laura's very upset. She goes to school and has a really bad day. She tells Bobby she desperately wants Coke.
Yeah.
And that night, they're in Bobby's basement making out. And a scene that I think really sheds new light on Bobby's character up until the return does, because the return makes him a great character. But I think it's easy to see Bobby at this point as just fucking jock meathead idiot.
Yeah.
But when he tells Laura, you don't love me, you only want the Coke, and then says, it's okay. Like that, I think really makes him a lot more self-aware than you give him on first glance.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, and it tells you he did love Laura.
Yeah.
And Dana Ashbrook, I think, delivers the most underrated performance
Yeah.
in the TV series. And that moment right there is like really transcendent.
Yeah, he's great. And then, we get this brief little interstitial where Laura has this painting of like this angel feeding kids in her bedroom.
Yeah.
And in the painting, the angel disappears, which we'll come back to in a little bit.
And this seems to be like her moment where she realizes, okay, this is it.
Tonight's the night.
We also get a little bit of like, it's not necessarily physical comedy, but it's a moment where she's drunk and she's trying to put on pantyhose and she can't, like, and she's frustrated, and it just feels like those moments where you're already in a depressive state and just you can't get your fucking shoes tied and you're just like, this is it. Like,
Yeah.
I want to this is the, this is the rock bottom for me, that I
Uh-huh.
can't get these fucking pantyhose on, you know. It's an interesting moment.
Now, this was always confusing. Okay, because James calls, says he wants to see her, correct? And
Yeah.
then she's like, all right, I'll see you in 15. And
Uh-huh.
she's like, why did I say that?
Yeah. I think it's because she wants to die. She knows she has to die.
Yeah.
Or she feels like she has to die. And there's part of her that's still trying to save herself against everything else that her brain is telling her.
Yeah.
But obviously she's getting ready to go to the cabin.
Yeah.
Right.
But like, how the fuck was she going to get to the cabin?
I don't know. Maybe she would have called Jacques to pick her up or
Right.
Leo to pick her up. I don't know.
That's the thing. Like, how we get from where we are at exactly right now to the end of the movie, I'm just so...
I will say that this scene of them in the woods and then when she leaves him on the road
Yeah.
is explained a little bit better in The Return, which I don't want to spoil. Because I do think even if you haven't seen The Return and you've only seen the movie, The Return will shed a lot of new light on this scene in those last two episodes.
The moment when she sees something over his shoulder and screams is kind of unbelievably wrapped up in the Return in a way that I love so much.
Well, that's what I was going to ask is like, Laura, she's talking to James in the middle of the woods and then she just screams out of nowhere.
Yeah.
And then James looks around and goes, what's wrong? And then they just kind of gloss over it. gets paid off so well in the return.
It does. It does. And she tells him, your Laura disappeared.
Yeah.
It's just me now.
Oof.
And that is what despair feels like. You're not even the person that everyone else wants you to be or thinks you are.
Her career should have exploded after this movie.
I know.
It's a fucking shame. But yeah, he says, you always hurt the ones you love. You mean the ones you pity.
She's trying to old yeller him.
We don't want you around. Yeah.
She's like, or whatever. She's like, I don't want you around anymore.
Yeah.
And he aggressively kisses her as like one last bid to like convince her to stay. And I think when he does that, I think it upsets her because she's already been batted around by men.
Yeah.
And when he does that, she says, you need to take me home.
I think you want to take me home now. Yeah.
Yeah.
Laura is passed around.
Yes.
Even from like every extreme of it, from James, who's trying to be the nice, sweet, sensitive guy, all the way to Jacques,
who always says the right things at the wrong time.
And to Jacques, who ties her up because he wants her to be, even though she's clearly saying no.
Okay, so this thing where she puts her on the back of the motorcycle, I'm presumably taking her home, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then she just falls off right at the spot where she needs to walk into the woods.
It's fate.
I think it's her being like, I could go home with them. It's a literal crossroads.
Yes.
I could have him take me home, but I know what I need to do, what has to be done, which is why she knows that Jacques and Leo are waiting out in the woods, I'm assuming at this point, and not just running into them naturally. But
right. That was the plan.
Here's the thing, though. James is the last person to see her alive that maybe could have saved her, even if she was incapable of being saved. And I think it's upsetting that he doesn't even try.
And it's telling that he waits till the light turns red and then leaves.
Yeah.
It's just like literally everything is telling you to stay and help her.
Yeah.
And he doesn't.
James is a bad dude presenting as a good dude.
Yeah.
In the TV show as well.
I think so too. And that scene also, that there's so many like little transition scenes in the show that just show a shot of a lonely stoplight.
Yeah.
And this scene loads those shots with so much meaning.
Yeah.
I love it.
So she runs into Renette and Leo and Jacques in the woods. They go to this cabin out in the woods and they're all fooling around together.
Waldo the bird is here.
Waldo the bird's here, which we'll see in the show. And then, Laura gets just drunk and inebriated. She's clearly just been passed around between Leo and Jacques.
Yeah.
And she's laying on this mattress. Jacques decides he wants another turn and ties her up, even though she's going, no, Jacques. She's clearly like half awake.
Telling him that she doesn't want that.
She doesn't want it to, again.
Right. And after that, she's begging to be untied and they just won't do it.
Yeah.
And in the show, it's presented as them, both Jacques and Leo are like, she loved this. She loved when we would tie her up with telephone cord.
Yeah.
And it's just, they didn't give a shit what she wanted.
No. She was a piece of meat.
Right.
That's all it was. And then, that's when Leland finds the cabin, clearly fully transfixed by Bob at this point.
Right.
And see, this is the thing. The last, other than the Bob thing, again, from my viewing, I don't know what was real, what was happening. If it was Bob doing that and she hallucinated Leland's face.
Uh-huh.
The last real scene of him being a father was him coming in there crying.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
And so at this point, I was like, we don't know which Leland we're getting.
Right.
And the fact that he just kills her attackers.
Yeah.
And stuff like that. I'm like, okay, well, maybe he's gonna save her. And
I definitely can see that interpretation if you haven't watched the TV show to be like, oh, he's coming to rescue her.
Uh-huh.
But those who've watched the show know that Jacques is not dead and Leo's not dead.
Oh.
Yeah.
In the TV show. Yeah, they play big pivotal parts. But that's crazy. See, that's why I think it's a good idea to have you watch this without watching the show, because that's an interesting interpretation to it.
That's really, that's fascinating.
But Leo just abandons them. Jacques gets knocked out by Leland, and Leland comes in and basically puts leashes on Renette and Laura.
And they start screaming, and he's screaming to mock them.
And she screams, "Daddy!"
Yeah.
While he's dragging her through the woods, which is...
And the rest of this is a fucking nightmare on film.
Yeah, so it was at that point when I was like, hey, I don't think Leland's a good guy.
No. But he drags them two to the train car, which is a crime scene in the show.
Mm-hmm.
Mike somehow is drawn to this as, the one-armed man is drawn to this out in the woods and tries to help, but Leland locks them two in a train car. And what's interesting is Renette is having a totally different experience than Laura is having in this scene.
Right.
Because she is basically pleading to be rescued.
Yeah.
and a literal angel appears to help rescue her.
Yes.
It's evocative, man. Like it ties her. She runs outside the train car. Mike tries to kind of help, but is more focused on Laura because he knows Laura is the key.
Mike throws the ring in. Am I correct in that?
You're right. You're
Okay.
right. I'm pretty sure because he has the ring. He gives it to her.
Yeah.
But yeah, Laura talking with Leland and Leland saying, I always thought you knew it was me as Bob. Is maybe the most fucked up line of dialogue I've ever heard.
Right.
And then, Mike shows up as we mentioned. And Mike just sort of leaves. I think because Leland locks the train car and he knows I'm here to rescue Laura if I'm going to rescue anybody. I don't really care about Renette. He doesn't even seem to acknowledge her, really.
No, he wants her. And she sees her reflection turn into Bob.
Yeah.
So we know the possession is about to be complete.
Yeah. Bob's here to possess her, not kill her. And then
Right.
because Mike throws the ring in and she puts it on against future Dale's wishes,
Yeah.
he decides he has no other recourse but to kill her.
So he kills her, and as we see in the show, she gets wrapped in this plastic tarp. And I think one of the most masterful pieces of editing in this film is with each fold of the tarp, the face changes from Bob to Leland.
Yeah.
That's an unbelievable bit of editing.
And just the visceral nature of her getting stabbed to death.
Yeah.
'Cause you don't see too much of it with the flashing editing and everything, but it's intense.
Yeah.
And yeah, this sets everything into motion because Leland takes her plastic wrapped body, leaves Renette there on the train tracks,
Yeah.
and pushes her into the river where she floats up onto the shoreline
Right.
where
Old Pete Martell finds her.
where Pete finds her. Yeah. This scene here, JT, where you see like the trees and the rock formation, that's actually like the quote unquote entryway to the waiting room
Yeah.
that we find out late in season 2. But that's all you really need to know about that because like the curtains appear and everything there. But yeah, then we cut to the waiting room because Leland goes there.
This is a scene that I have a hard time making heads or tails of.
I think this takes place midway through season 2.
Okay. Interesting.
I think this is after episode 8 or 9, whatever it is that Leland has his moment
Uh-huh.
because he's got this bleeding gut wound.
Right.
And he's standing in front of Mike in the arm and he starts kind of floating.
That bow is so weird.
He starts floating in midair and he's catatonic clearly. And Bob takes the wound essentially and removes it and throws the blood on the floor.
Yeah.
I think this is after he's already died in the TV show.
That's fascinating. Okay. I could buy that.
What do you make of it?
I had always thought that this was him trying to deliver the pain from Laura, and instead of it taking the form of the corn,
That's interesting. It's just the blood.
it's just blood because he failed.
I like that idea.
But I'm still not 100% sure on that, because we also see gut wounds take as a big part of the return as well.
And season 2, episode 1.
Yeah, sure, absolutely.
But he like takes the wound away, which is why I was like, that's because
That is interesting.
when would we have that wound in the real world?
Right, because Leland, spoilers, in the show dies from like head trauma.
Yeah.
Like he slams his head against the walls over and over again until he dies.
Yeah.
God, I didn't need this shot of the corn.
The corn, which that is clearly a shot of Michael Anderson spitting the corn onto the spoon and then played it in reverse.
Yeah.
I couldn't make heads or tails of the monkey saying Judy. I got no answers for you there.
So the original plan, from what I understand, is that Judy was going to be revealed to be Josie's long lost sister from the Packard mill in the
Right.
show, and then there's a big retcon in like the last 2 episodes of The Return.
Yeah, the return kind of explains what Judy's all about, but we're not going to talk about Judy.
We're not going to talk about Judy.
And then, Laura's body's found wrapped in plastic alongside the river, just like in the show. And in the waiting room, Dale Cooper is there and comforts Laura, who looks incredible, by the way. And the angel reappears. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, Nathan. I think this is the only time we ever see an actual angel in all of Twin Peaks.
Gosh.
I can't recall another time.
There might be a moment in episode 8, but I think this is the only time that there's like a full-on angel with wings. Yeah. And this is the one reason where I sort of challenge this being on the show.
Okay.
Because Laura is so sad. It looks like she's reflecting on everything that's happened. And then she starts,
Yeah, you're choking up.
she starts smiling and crying because everything was terrible, but she's safe now.
Yeah.
Like it, and this ending is so cathartic and beautiful that it makes the ending of The Return so fucking devastating.
It's that ending to The Return is one of the best endings of television I've ever seen. But you're right, it is haunting as hell. The reason I put this on the show is because there's a lot of reasons. Number one, Laura had to die in order to bring balance to things.
Yeah.
Which I think is already upsetting because she's a teenage girl.
Right.
Literally the weight of the universe on her, which The Return makes way more explicit.
And the ambiguity of it is
This could be a smile of, I'm free of all that. It could also be a smile of losing her mind because...
derangement.
Yeah, because she's in that waiting room throughout Twin Peaks as well, and so is her doppelganger, which is a whole other story. But
or it could be a smile of that she wasn't crazy for seeing all this.
That's too.
Like finally, oh thank God, this is real.
Yeah,
like seeing the angel disappear from the picture and stuff like that, and now it's here right in front of her, knowing that like she wasn't crazy.
It also is just like the whole movie, like it's devastating for like the last 2 hours. So like this scene is as a cathartic moment as it is, it's still like I just endured almost a snuff film for 2 hours.
Yeah, true.
Just a woman losing her mind basically at the hands of men. So yeah, that is Firewalk with Me. Did we miss any of your guys' notes before we get to our wrap up segments?
No, we actually covered all of my notes.
This may be a top 10 movie for me of all time, by the way.
Yeah, me too. I get why it's a frustrating watch, and it's 100% not for everyone, but it hits me on such a visceral emotional level that I can't even compare it to anything else.
Absolutely. JT, now that we've talked through it all, does this make more sense to you? Are you curious? Are you interested in going to the TV show at all?
Yeah. I mean, so, because I do want to get more, because at the end of the day, this movie was well shot. There's characters that I want to know more about.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, it left me with more questions than answers, but I think that's why I want to go check out Twin Peaks.
Sure.
Especially the first 30 minutes. It's funny.
It's so funny in those first 30 minutes.
The high school stuff, where it did seem like a soap opera, it also seemed like a young adult, like a TV show.
Mm-hmm.
Like a Dawson's Creek or something.
Yeah, exactly. It was so, I don't know, it seemed like a time capsule of 90s television.
Yeah.
And so, I'm really interested in checking it out. Obviously, I have no notes because I didn't even know where to start.
Sure.
I mean, and I was just like, they did this on purpose, and I need to watch the movie more than I need to take notes. So,
well, what I'll say as a preamble, if you do decide to give the show a watch, just know that the first 2 seasons of the show are primetime cable television. You're not getting anything as visceral as this.
Yeah.
There are fleeting moments where you have like the macabre, weird, unexplainable like scenes in that, but it is mostly like a campy, melodramatic soap opera that's funny and goofy.
Yeah.
And it's heightened sense of reality. But I think that is it's a different thing that I love about Twin Peaks. Whereas I think in the order of which I love them is Firewalk with Me, The Return, the first 2 seasons.
Mm-hmm.
The Return is much more what I'm looking for in Twin Peaks, and it's a different vibe than these two are. It is all like deadly serious with like tongue-in-cheek jokes and stuff, but it'll answer a lot of your questions. So if you do decide to go into it, that's very exciting. I hope you do.
So where does this fit in the time? So it's Firewalk with Me, then Twin Peaks, and then Return?
And then The Return. That's the chronological time.
Technically, yeah, but I honestly would recommend watching the first 2 seasons, then the movie, then The Return. Just
Absolutely.
because
right, that's what you should do.
You'll understand more.
This also like occupies an interesting place as both a prequel and a sequel at the same time.
Yes, as does The Return in parts. And if you want to throw the missing pieces in there, which again, some of it is canon to The Return, watch it after this before you watch The Return.
Right.
But all right, well, let's hop over to Prop Cop. If you've never listened to the show before, you've tuned into one hell of an episode that might be our longest one ever somehow.
Yeah.
Prop Cop is where we look at all of the props in the movie we just talked about, and that can mean anything tangible, physical, that you want to own for yourself, theoretically. Like you want to take a prop from set and keep it in your collection.
Mm-hmm.
What prop do you want the most? I think I'm going to go with the sign that Harry Dean Stanton has, the cardboard sign on his trailer door that says, "Do not disturb before 9 a.m. ever."
Ever, yeah.
He's so real for that.
Absolutely.
I love it. He goes, "Oh, now that's more shit I got to do now when the FBI shows up."
That's right. Yeah.
Nathan, what prop do you want?
When they pull into the mechanic shop after the confrontation with the one-armed man, The shop door has a small little red sign that says "Treat 'em right," and I want that just as a reminder.
Hell yeah. JT, what about you?
Either the Cable Ben Still picture
Hell yeah.
Yep.
or the picture of the door of her room.
That's a
Yeah,
good
I love
one.
that.
I thought was really interesting.
I also like the neon clown on the sign outside of Harp's Diner where Irene works.
Sure.
All right. Well, what about a bit part?
That's great.
Now, if you couldn't make that out, that is that one weird extra in Maximum Overdrive that just burst in. It goes, what the fuck is going on here?
Yeah, the best.
Which I felt like was pretty apt for this movie to include him. So,
Yes.
who is a small minor character, maybe one that doesn't even have a line of dialogue, that it would be fun for us to play in the movie, for us to recast that character? Nathan, who would you want to be?
When Cooper goes to visit the trailer park, there's a lady that I think it's when Cooper's there. It might be when Chet's there, but there's a lady.
I think it's Chet.
There's a lady that walks in a weird line up to Carl and then goes, "Where's my hot water?"
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
I want that. I want to play her.
I think I want to be the bus driver at the beginning of the movie that gets pat down while all the kids in the school bus are crying.
Yeah. Amazing.
JT?
The mechanic that got way too close to Leland.
Dude. I wrote that guy down too.
To be like, you're going to blow your engine up.
He seems to have stepped out of like Back to the Future, like when they're in the 50s.
Uh-huh.
He's like, "Mister, you drive your car like that, you gonna burn your engine right."
He just seemed way too concerned about,
David Lynch loves characters and like just people with weird faces and voices and stuff. And that guy, I love how it's so out of the realm of that scene, because that scene is so weird and crazy and heavy. And then this guy, this fucking like newscap boy, kind of steps in.
You can tell when he comes back to work on the show in season 2. There's that one moment that just starts with a trucker yelling, "Damn good pie!"
Yep.
It's so good.
God, the return fucking rules. Okay. Well, I think this movie, more than a lot of movies we talk about on the show, definitely needs one. Let's talk about a silver lining.
Can I go first? Only
Yeah.
because I'm worried because there's not a lot of silver linings in this.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I don't want mine to get taken.
Please.
And where I would say it's not a silver, but maybe a gray lining. And that is that Laura stopped all that before Donna, it got worse.
Yeah. I think that's great.
That's a good one.
It's still awful.
Right.
Still awful that it got that far.
Yeah.
But it could have been worse.
No, that's perfect. Nathan, what about you?
This one's tough because I feel like it kind of gets undone by the events of the return,
Sure.
but Laura's free at the end of this movie.
I wrote that down too.
Yeah.
I wrote that down too. You're right. JT, I really do hope you decide to give the show a watch, because when you get to the return, it's like my mind exploded with all of the possibilities and everything.
Yeah.
And that everything about Laura and the fact that I think this is well known enough now that it's not a spoiler, that season 2 ends in a way with Laura Palmer in the Red Room telling Dale Cooper, "I'll see you again in 25 years.
Yeah.
And then 25 years later, the return comes out.
It's insane.
It's incredible. I'm so happy Showtime gave him the money to make the return before he passed away. Man, what a show. It's not really a silver lining, but it's how I interpret the movie, and what is, to me, it makes me think of it in a more positive light, which is just what Philip Jeffries says, which is we live inside a dream. This is all a dream. And as much as Laura Palmer is a fully 3-dimensional realized character, I think at the end of the day, this is all a dream. And I think maybe even why she smiles at the end of the movie is realizing that.
Yeah.
So there you go.
I like that.
All right. Well, desperately, we need us a pick-me-up. So what movie should we double feature with Fire Walk With Me? Something to balance things out a little bit, because this is a downer movie. What's something that'll put us in better spirits? Nathan, what do you got?
I would recommend another David Lynch film, 1999's The Straight Story.
Oh yeah.
If you left this, if you left the only Disney movie directed by David Lynch,
I was going to say,
if you left this movie feeling baffled, bewildered, and sick to your stomach, which I completely understand, The Straight Story is his most accessible film, I think.
Yeah.
It's also just kind of a gentle story about a man who goes cross country on a tractor to go visit his ailing brother. And it's a beautiful, incredibly well acted film.
Based on a true story as well.
Yeah.
My official answer here is going to be actually a documentary that came out a couple years ago about David Lynch. And in particular, it's about his obsession with The Wizard of Oz.
Oh, yeah.
That I found pretty enlightening. It's called Lynch/Oz.
It's great.
It's got John Waters. It's got Amy Nicholson. It's got a bunch of filmmakers in there and critics talking about Lynch and everything he does, how it compares to The Wizard of Oz, and it's a pretty good thing. Now, what I will say as a secondary one here that I just think would be fun is a movie that I think is okay, or maybe even good, but not great, and I think has a great David Lynch scene in it, which is The Fabelmans.
Hell yes.
Where he plays John Ford, and it fucking rules.
It's an unbelievable performance.
Absolutely. JT, what are you watching?
Well, I've never seen a movie quite like this.
Yeah.
And I usually like to have my recommendations at least related to this some way. And
if it's unrelated, that's fine.
Yeah.
Well, Chrissy and I checked out The Monkey last night.
Yeah.
Oh, and it was all right.
It's fun.
It was a fun, good time. Yeah.
It's a fun little movie. Also featuring a harbinger of death in the
Quite
form
literally.
of a white horse.
Yeah, that's
in that
true.
movie.
Yeah.
I really wanted that movie to be the next Malignant, and it just barely doesn't reach that level.
Yeah.
But it's a fun little movie. And then lastly, I think I know the answer, at least from you, Nathan, but do we recommend Fire Walk with Me?
Yes. I think it's important to know the trigger warnings that we mentioned ahead of time.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't think there's another movie quite like this. And it's my favorite of Lynch's films. I know it's a divisive movie, but yeah, it impacts me on such a visceral level that I think it's worth checking out. And if you don't vibe with it, that's okay.
Yeah.
But it's just a very important movie to me.
JT, I'm going to save you for last because I want to hear your thoughts. But I would say, yeah, with every fiber of my being, I recommend this thing. This is one of the most beautiful, one of the saddest, and also somehow one of the funniest movies ever made.
Yeah.
Somehow David Lynch is able to thread all of those emotions into one film, and it works tremendously. It's soaked in melancholy, and yet at times it's, again, one of the funniest movies I've ever seen.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a masterpiece that really does so much to sort of close the book on Twin Peaks nicely, even without the return, and even without answering all the questions you have about it. I am worried because, again, I've seen Mulholland Drive, but I don't remember much about it. I am worried that when I now start to open David Lynch's filmography up to myself for the first time, that I may be disappointed that nothing lives up to this. That's my fear.
Yeah.
But we'll see. JT, so what are your final thoughts? Do you recommend people see this thing?
All right, so it's hard to recommend it with obviously without the context needed to understand the bare minimum rules of Twin Peaks. So I would say once you watch it, well, even then, just because of the nature of the content, it's still very hard to recommend for some viewers.
Of course,
like you're talking like a sense of hopelessness compared to like Requiem or
yeah,
something, you know what I mean?
yeah.
And whereas you're gonna have a bad time, but does that make it a bad movie? No.
That's a good quote. That's a
love
good
that.
pull quote to put on the box art.
Yeah.
So yes, but just watch the context first because I was struggling so hard.
Yeah, definitely. You should probably watch at least the first two seasons of the show to really understand this thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, that is Twin Peaks Fire Walk with Me. If you haven't already, please give us a rating and some feedback. Subscribe wherever you're listening to us right now.
Mm-hmm.
If you haven't already, follow us on social media. We're on Blue Sky, Instagram, TikTok, and Lemonade. You can find those links in our show notes. You can check out our subreddit at reddit.com/r/Silver Linings Playlist. Our website has all this information and more, TSLPpodcast.com.
Mm-hmm.
If you have a bit part suggestion for us, it's a clue as a cue that plays into our bit part discussion, you can email that to us at the Silver Linings Playlist at gmail.com or use the contact us form on our website to do so. Or if you just want to get in touch with us and tell us how you're doing, how you're feeling about the show, any feedback, you can do that there. And lastly, check out our Patreon if you want more of the show at patreon.com/Silver Linings Playlist. By the time this episode comes out, we will have released Turtles Forever, which dropped today. And actually, no, today, I believe, will be the first Michael Bay movie. That episode will drop today, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, boy.
So here are our thoughts on that. And if you haven't already signed up for the Patreon, as I said, it's only $1 a month, and it's a 7-day free trial.
Mm-hmm.
Even if you want to use the free tier, there's a bunch of bonus stuff you get on there if you don't want to pay the $1, but that's okay. Now, Mallory's not here, but his movie is our next pick.
That's
and
right.
It is a total whiplash from what we're talking about this week
It's a doozy.
to what we're talking about next week. But
Yeah.
he did send me over a clue that disappeared into a cloud of smoke after he sent it to me. But let's hear what that clue is. SAG went on strike against AI last year, and next week we watch one of their members physically fight against it.
That's good.
And this message will self-destruct in 10 seconds.
There you go.
There you go. So he'll be back to talk about that movie next week, and it'll be a much more fun, upbeat episode.
Yeah.
But thank you for listening, everyone. Rest in peace, Oatmeal, and I guess Laura Palmer. And as always,
we live inside a dream.
Golly. Worth it.
The hardest thing I've ever had to do. It is so much harder than it feels like it should be.
My original plan, because I told you that my intro was going to be a bit that I decided was too difficult. I was going to record myself saying my wife backwards and playing it forwards.
It is much harder than it seems to speak forward, play it backwards, record it played backwards, and then record it forwards. It's so difficult.
His wife.
Here, you know what? Here, I'll play my other one.
Oh, good.
This is a Formica podcast. Blue is its color.
Okay.
Blue is the warmest color.
All right, let's get the fuck out of here.
All right.
Let's rock.
Okay, this is what I've heard, and I'll relay to you. The thorns on the rosebush right now are big, and there are many of them, and they're sharp. These are the poisonous thorns of negativity. But the rose is so much bigger. It's huge and beautiful. This is the rose of positivity. And this is the rose of our future. And it is huge and it is beautiful. Right now, the thorns of negativity are making their last desperate stand. But soon they're going to wither and fall away. They're going to rot and disappear. So don't despair. Great times are coming for the United States and for the whole world family.
Hello, YouTube. If you've made it this far, thanks. Could you do us one more favor? Could you hit those like and subscribe buttons? Maybe leave us a comment on what you think of the show. We'd really appreciate it. Join us again next week for an all-new episode. Bye.